Yo, what's good, everybody? I'm GG. You tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. It's the place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up with no chases, man. Before I get things started, man, I want to give a shout out to all the haters out there, man. I hope y'all having a good afternoon. If you're coming in, man, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell notification button, please, if you haven't done so already, man. Thank you. And for those who have been here before, man, and you dig the content, man,
share the damn video, bitch.
Share the video, man, please. Stop playing with me, man. But, you know, I'm going to take this time, like I always do, to shout out all the people that support the Green Gorilla channel on an ongoing basis through a membership on either YouTube or Patreon. So, shout out to Red Falls Black, Electrician 480, Sherlin Woe, Be Conscious Black Honey, Broken Blade, Brotherly Love 215, Inherently Intuitive, Shadow Observer, Stefan Jastek, Free Agent for Life, Andre, Damian H, J. Cleveland Green, Black Men Being Brutally Honest, Binga, Gerard Shelton, Hostile Adept, Timothy Blewett, Dar, and Honest Look at the End, Roderick Jackson, Cutting Up with the Jones, Void Be Free, Zanko 1, Cornelius Bellamy, and Salty Balls. Big up to y'all, man. Big up to Mike Johnston, No Sleep, Tel Toya, Devon Love Ridge, Timothy Blewett, Wild Bear 50, Sunra 44, Barnolis, BGS Ibmore, Mantis on Break, Lock Vegas 05, BMROC, Passport OG, Rashid Barnes, Leon 008, Artisan MC, Dub Will, Mr. Good Dad, and Third Coast X. Big up to y'all, man. Shout out to Michael Ross, 63rd Samurai, Ishmael Samad, The Watcher, The Ruthless Heartless Revelator, Kill the Game, Dr. Thunder. Congratulations on becoming a full professor, by the way. Jason Hales, Charles Finney, Interesting Thought, The Silent Warrior, Naomi Gary, The Black Toxic Masculinist, Seek Truth, Larry R, Seth Sun, Afro Troop TV, Show Me, Spain Man, Anthony Davis, and I'm Just Jules. Big up. Shout out to Ricky Dawson, Truth 7360, Mr. Me Too, Call for President, Gold Professor, AKs and Curtains, H-Town, Roguish the Billmonger, Adrian Thomas, D. Scott, Path Guy 74, Pete Rock, Aaron Peters, Vince Lindsay, Quiz the Poet, Black Wizard ADOS, Troy Warren, Mrs. KP Bailey, Alan Wiley, The Face, Life of Commerce, AI Apostle, and Jeffrey Speed. Big up. Shout out to Marvin Battle Jr., Adam Ignatz Mouse, Dr. Tree 33, 77 Base X, Brian McMurray, K. Reness, Charles Rogers, Rick Ross, and Charles Gilmore III, man. Big up, man. Shout out to Greg, Barry Little, Mr. Valentino, Doc LaRock, Mark Swift, Odd Collar, Donald Watts, Coach DC, Mr. Blue Collar, TD Hip Hop Media, Drew Main, Mr. Heat, Sir Anthony, MLR, Universal 178, Aaron Smith, DH, A-Double, Kalanja Collar, and WPR1, man. Big up to all y'all, man. And I can't forget the brethren in the ethereal plane, David Carroll, Forrest Windu, and Karen Samuels. Big up. On my Patreon side, I want to give a shout out to Chitterburn, Amari, Frank Black, Robert Wicks, Chris Flowers, Christopher Burton, Daxby the Tetrahedron, J Live, Keith Bass Jr., Nick, Albert C., Dr. Ben Vincent, Waffle Weave, Darnell Smith, Excalibur, Preserved Prisoner, Taz, Dragon 59, Jay Bailey, Momal, and Asane. Well, big up to all y'all, man. Thank you so much for supporting the Green Gorilla channel, man. You deserve a round of applause, man. You know what I'm saying? Thank you so much for supporting the channel, man. And if you are inquiring on how you can help support the Green Gorilla channel, then you need to take heed to the following message. I'll be back. What's good, everybody? I'm the G with a PhD, and you're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel, the place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up, no chaser. Today, I want to introduce you to my new membership program that consists of 5 levels where you can invest in the Green Gorilla channel on a monthly basis and receive level-specific perks. Memberships are special because they improve the quality of the content of the channel and will help me to be able to keep the channel going. Now, to participate in the Green Gorilla channel membership program, all you have to do is hit the join button, which is located right next to the subscribe button on my channel page. Now, for all of my subscribers who decide not to participate in my membership program, nothing will change. The content will keep coming the way it always has. Thanks for watching, and be careful out here, people. Bless. All right, man, I'm GG. You know what I came here to do, man. I came here to talk about neoliberalism today, what it is, and is there anything wrong with it? Of course, you know, this is a place where black men can express themselves freely. So every now and then you might hear a pejorative term, you know, which means a curse word or something like that. Every now and then you might hear me say something that's politically incorrect. So
The content of this channel is for mature audiences. Parental discretion is advised.
just to let you know, man, before we even start doing anything, man, you might hear some, you know, this channel is not for virgin ears, man, put it that way. So having said all that, I'm going to talk about something. It's not really, it's not titillating. It's not exciting. It's not talking about, you know, what's going on in popular culture. It ain't talking about what's going on with Papoose and Remy Ma. You know what I'm saying? It ain't about what's going on, you know, with the brick lady, or, you know, it ain't a conversation about Neon Dion and nothing like that. It's about, you know, economics, man. And that's what it's about today, at any rate. So having said all that, what I'm going to do is, for the most part, talk about this scholar. That's the dude right there. I don't know if you ever seen him before. I don't know if you ever seen that guy ever in your life. His name is Robin Hanel. Okay, that's his name, Robin Hanel. Okay, just in case you didn't know, he is. I mean, just to give you some background about this guy. He's an American economist. He's a professor of economics at American University. And I'm talking about him because BGS sent me this video, okay? He sent me and Mr. Z a video. And I tried to reach out to Mr. Z. He didn't reach back out, which, you know, I'm not mad about it. I know we all got things to do. But at any rate, I figured it was interesting. And so I wanted to have a conversation about it, especially since there's so many guys here who are kind of like married to the idea of conservatism, which I'm not. But I'm not, you know, some sort of person who has a lot of fidelity to the left either. However, but there are a lot of guys who think that, you know, there's nothing wrong with the entirety of the platform that's set up and established by the right. And, you know, of course, neoliberalism is an economic philosophy promoted by the right, the neocons. And so anyway, I thought it would be interesting to cover it. So anyway, Robin Hanel is an American economist. He's a professor at American University. He's been, you know, working in academia for like decades, okay? Now, one of the things that he's done is he's developed some sort of idea called participatory economics. And if you ask me, participatory economics sounds a lot like participatory democracy, developed by people like, at least the rudiments of the ideas anyway, people like Habermas, John Rawls, Amy Gutman, Dennis Thompson, John Dryzek, Iris Young, James Bowman, this is a whole host of people who, you know, Michael, I don't think Michael Sandels is a part of it. But anyway, there's a tradition called participatory democracy. Anyway, so this is kind of like it. Instead of, you know, participating in making governmental decisions, as is the case in participatory democracy, participatory economics is set up in such a way as to demand, you know, equitable cooperation as it pertains to markets, okay? So anyway, man, I mean, you know, the guy, you know, he's been teaching economics for quite a bit of time. And basically, we're going to go over this video and see what we can come up with, you know. And I'm going to break the video down. Again, this is not titillating stuff, but I think it's important. But I'm going to break the video down and present some pretty complex concepts in, I think, in common sense terms, all right? Now, I don't know what y'all know about the housing problem or the housing crisis of 2008, but I mean, it was an event that was basically prompted by a series of factors, okay? So let's unpack it, right? And this is before I even get into, the video, okay? So, like, look, if you don't know what neoliberalism calls for is, or what it is, it's a political and an economic philosophy that basically advocates for minimal government, small government, right? Especially as it pertains to intervention in markets, okay? And of course, neoliberalism is often blamed for the deregulatory environment that preceded the 2008 housing crisis, okay? So there was an act of 1999 called the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act, okay? And it repealed parts of another act called the Glass-Steagall Act, okay? And basically, the repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act allowed commercial banks to engage in investment banking strategies, okay? And one could say that this is the start of the ending, okay? So it allowed commercial banks to start engaging in investment banking enterprises, okay? And that deregulation is considered to be the source of risky financial behaviors being able to thrive. That's the source, okay? So what happened? You got financial institutions that began to offer mortgage loans to subprime borrowers. People that, and look, I'm gonna tell you the truth, man. Okay, I went to college with some motherfuckers, right? I went to college with these guys, man, and they're from St. Louis, and they were in St. Louis. Man, I'd say about 2003, 2004, 2005, them motherfuckers was making stupid bread. They were making stupid bread by processing housing loans. And they were processing housing loans to people who could not afford over the long run to have a house. But these are my boys, though. So, like, what can you say about it? I mean, they found a hustle. It wasn't selling dope, put it that way. But it was basically underwriting or helping people to apply for subprime mortgages, balloon rate mortgages and shit like that, okay? And so here's the deal, right? Like, before, I don't know whether to tell this story now or to tell it a little bit later. I think I'm going to tell it a little bit later, not that much later. But anyway, financial institutions began to offer subprime loans to people with poor credit histories, okay? And the assumption was that housing prices would continue to rise, which would make the loans less risky than they actually were. So then you got securitization, okay? And which is basically taking all of these mortgages that are subprime and bundling them into mortgage-backed securities, which would then be sold to investors, okay? So the idea here is to spread the risk. But it obscured the riskiness of the loans. So let me tell you how this shit used to go, okay? Like, when you used to get a loan for a house, you would go to a local bank or a state or, a bank close to your house, okay? Or the house that you want, okay? You would go to that bank, and the way the loan would be processed is in such a way that the loan officers would be intimately connected to the kind of loans that they were giving out. Like, they would take their time and they would understand, like, they were committed to holding that loan for 30 years, so they had to be careful on who they gave the loans to, okay? They couldn't just give them to anybody, okay? If there was poor credit history, in all likelihood, I'm not saying in every instance you would get turned down, but there had to be evidence that you could hold on to the property. They weren't in the habit of, writing sloppy loans to anybody just so they could turn a profit. But what happened is securitization allowed people to dump the loans off to other buyers. So you could buy a house and then within 2 weeks, 3 or 4 different companies might own your loan or might be the steward of the debt related to your loan and you're paying them back. So that's a problem in and of itself. Then you got rating agencies, credit rating agencies like Standard & Poor, right? Who basically were like, okay, well, you want a high rating? We'll give you one. You want us to just say, we rubber stamp your loans and say that, they have high ratings? No problem. So this led to people thinking that these subprime security packages were actually safe, right? Then you get, on top of this, collateralized debt obligations, which is fucking ridiculous. I wrote an article about it, but go read the article. It further obscured the risks and contributed to the financial instability, okay? Selling and processing debt, like it's selling of debt, okay? Multiple forms of debt, which I don't think it's good policy, okay? That's just me personally. I don't think it's good policy, okay? But anyway, on top of this, America doesn't exist isolated from other markets. So because of the interconnectedness that America has to global financial markets, the crisis spread beyond the United States. And I don't know if you know exactly what a bubble is, but I mean, ultimately it's like a Ponzi scheme to me in a sense. But I mean, you don't really get a recession until people stop loaning money. When banks stop loaning money to each other, especially in an instance like this, it's like, well, typically on a regular day, one bank would call another bank, I need to borrow a big amount of money. Oh, sure thing, buddy. I'll see you on the golf course a little bit later on. And I think that Hanno kind of describes this process. But I mean, at some point when, riskiness, like these guys, like they understand to a certain extent that like at some point the bubble's going to break and they're like, well, I can't loan you the money. As soon as one actor says that I can't loan you the money, this creates a panic. Other people communicate about it. Nobody knows exactly the debt that other people are holding, whether it's toxic, whether it's non-toxic, whether the loans are bad, whether they're good. You just don't know. And so that creates it creates like a speculation about non-safe loans, and it causes people to stop letting the money flow, and that leads to recessions and shit like that. But at any rate, so globalization is a factor. Human behavior is a factor. People, driven by short-term gains, they basically contributed to risky lending and investment practices. Okay, and also regulatory failure, okay, is a culprit here as well, because the agencies, nobody did their job in making sure to adequately monitor and control risky lending and investment activities. Now, the whole idea is that, okay, well, in a free market, everybody, will police themselves. Well, we got a lot of evidence that that's not the case, okay? But anyway, you got other economic conditions which led to it as well, like the burst of the dot-com bubble. You got the 9/11 attacks that, that happened not too long off from, the housing bubble. And these events also contributed to economic uncertainty. But all in all, I think that the problem associated with neoliberalism to me is, especially today, is it still relevant? It definitely is relevant, because one can argue that after the 2008 housing crisis, who bailed these people out? Who bailed them out? Who bailed them out? Bernanke just came with a whole bunch of money, man, and just said, here, man, you motherfuckers can have some money, man. Here, you can have some money. We gotta keep the shell game going. We can't have it stop. Too big to fail. So they just threw money at the problem. But the problem is that they didn't actually fix the conditions and the regulations that led to the proliferation of the problem in the first place, okay? So, shout out to Mississippi Delta guy, appreciate that donation, man. Appreciate that. I gotta shout him out, man. Anytime I get one of them, I gotta shout out my brother, man.
Down from the M.I. Crooked letter I. Crooked letter I. Humpback guy. Said, bitch, I'm a demon, just look at my eyes. You don't wanna die. Chopper gon' blow in this motherfucker fire. I told my nigga, let's go and let's ride. Nigga won't play and that motherfucker died. That motherfucker died. Cause I'm from the M.I. Crooked letter I. Crooked letter I. Humpback guy. Said, bitch, I'm a demon, just look at my eyes. Say, I'm down the ride. Chopper gon' blow in this motherfucker fire. Pussy, you play, motherfucker, you die. That's on the gang and that's on the gas. Pussy, you play, watch that motherfucker ride.
Shout out to Mississippi Delta guy. Also, shout out to Volcanus, man. Appreciate that donation, sir. Appreciate that, man. And yeah, King Tut, that's exactly what it is. It's privatize the gains, spread the socialist losses. Private gains, socialist losses. And that's the cold part of it, right? That's the cold part of it all, man. But anyway, I thought that was worth taking a look into. But anyway, so look, I'm not gonna, the video would take, if I go over all of the video, it'll take too long. I'm just gonna explore the first maybe 30 minutes of the video, and I'll be stopping the video here and there, but and I'll be breaking it down to try to explain what the hell this guy's talking about, okay? But I mean, he does a pretty good job himself, but yeah. So anyway, man, let's get to this, man. Because I don't want to do this all night. I'll probably do the first 6 of these, and then after that, I'm gonna call it quits, and I'll resume it maybe Sunday, and then, you know, if you want to comment, talk, converse, whatever, we can do it. But let's get into it, man.
So I think it's worth knowing the details so one doesn't hold players in awe who have so thoroughly discredited themselves that they should never be allowed to be making decisions that affect the rest of us again. And yet if you look at who is making decisions, who are the advisors, in the United States, were the people in charge of the banks replaced. When the government came in and saved the banks, did it insist on them changing any policies? No. Did it insist on them changing personnel? No. We extracted no concessions from them for the bailout, for the gift of giving them their life back. We extracted absolutely no concessions, and they are still very much in charge. And in case you're wondering whether the Financial Reform Act that was passed finally in 2009, did that really re-regulate the financial industry in the United States? Absolutely not. It was basically a political fig leaf that the politicians handed to the financial industry because there was fury in the United States. Right and left, everybody was up in arms over what these people had done. And essentially what the Financial Relief Act that was passed in 2009 did was it pretended that we had somehow gone ahead and re-regulated the financial industry so that nothing like this would ever happen again.
So, I mean, in essence, he's saying, like, the very conditions that gave rise to the 2008 housing crisis have not been fixed at all. And the same people who were in charge then are in charge now. And they're engaged in the same kind of risky behavior. And the question is whether or not this makes any sense. Is it smart? Is it intelligent? One could argue this is some bullshit, okay? Now, let me just say this before I even begin to delve into what this man has to talk about. I just want to say, okay, it's just worth noting that when you talk about economics, the first economists were philosophers, okay? Like the person who's considered to be the father of modern economics was a moral philosopher. He wrote a book called The Theory of Moral Sentiments. His name is Adam Smith, okay? But he's most known for The Wealth of Nations, which was rooted in Enlightenment thinking. And you got people who are also like the founders of modern economics, like David Ricardo, John Stuart Mill, and so on and so forth. Now, look, my viewpoint on modern philosophy is this, because one could argue that classical economic theory is undergirded by modern philosophy, specifically the modern idea about what human beings are like. So the metaphysics of the person. I think they get it wrong. I mean, I just think they're wrong about it. Okay? They basically say that human beings are rational actors who make decisions solely based or primarily based around maximizing utility. And to me, this is just a simplification of how human beings behave, okay? It doesn't capture the complexity of human behavior at all, which is influenced not only by thought processes, but it's influenced by norms, habits, emotions, and other non-economic factors. People don't just act like fucking Dr. Spock, bro. They don't. They just don't, okay? So, I mean, there are other philosophers like, for example, like there's a guy named Amartya Sen. I don't know if you ever heard him, but he critiques this modern idea that human agency can be reduced to, you know, people behaving in a rational way such that they're trying to maximize their utility. This is not how human beings are, okay? So that's the first thing. I think that classical economic theory, which is for all intents and purposes, is neoliberalism, if you ask me. Laissez-faire economics, right? It just gets the metaphysics of the person wrong because it's based on modern philosophy, which is outdated, okay? Now, the other question is whether or not economics is a science. Now, in my viewpoint, okay, if it's anything, it is a social science, okay? It is definitely not the kind of science that a lot of economists act like it is. I mean, they pretend that economics has the same kind of results and sophistication, for example, of like physics or chemistry. That's just a lie. It's a lie. It's not how economics works, okay? It's not how, anytime you put human beings into an equation where you have to predict what they'll do, well, now you've opened up a can of worms. Like hydrogen, oxygen, iron, helium, gold, silver, electrons, protons, neutrons, they are inanimate objects that follow physical laws, one could argue. But human beings, although they are subjected to the laws of physics, their behavior is unpredictable, man. And I guarantee you the model that classical economists use to try to explain human behavior is wrong to me. But anyway, having said all that, the question is whether or not economics is a science. I personally don't think it is. I don't, okay? Now, question is, can you replicate experiments in economics? I guess. What is the predictive accuracy of economics? Because one could argue that the gold standard of any kind of scientific theory is predictability. Does it actually have the capacity to forecast what's going to happen in the future? Okay. I think economics falls short in terms of its predictive power and it's explanatory power. I do. It deals with complex, multivariable systems that are almost impossible to test in a controlled environment. Nonetheless, it does put on the veneer of science by using mathematics and, I mean, if you try to, put it this way, it uses the systematic approach of science, but I don't think it really actually hits the mark. Okay, it looks like it could be a science, but I don't actually think it is. But anyway, not only that, typically when you're talking about inanimate objects, normativity doesn't enter into the equation. Like when you're talking about economics, it does though. There are normative assumptions that are basic to economic theory, whereas you don't get that with science. Nobody gives a fuck about like what ought to be when it comes to measuring and predicting what's going to happen in the physical sciences. But when it comes to economics, it's rife with these normative assumptions. What's fair, what's not fair, what's right, what's not right, what's just or unjust. It underlies basic economic theory and policies, right? Even the debate about whether free market capitalism is efficient, right? It's not just about efficient, it's about whether or not it's fair, right? Or whether socialism is fair, right? So it's about values and ethics as much as it is about what's efficient and what's productive. There's more to it, okay? And there's controversy over this. I mean, look, at the end of the day, some say that economics has moved closer to being a science, but it still misses the mark, okay? Others say, like, it's still fundamentally a normative and interpretive kind of investigatory practice or field, and there's no unified consensus amongst economists about anything, whereas like with, like chemists, the periodic table of elements is perceived as being like, the gold standard. Like chemists agree on a whole lot more than economists do, right? So at the end of the day, there's no consensus. There's a whole bunch of, like bickering and, agreeing or disagreeing, going back and forth. So at the end of the day, I just think, economics employs scientific methods like data collection and statistical analysis, but its foundational assumptions, as far as I'm concerned, they're normative and they're philosophical, okay? So having said all that, I'm just gonna play the dude's video, man, because I'll make this longer than it's gotta be. And shout out to Jabari Davis, man. Shout out. He says, econ is predictably wrong. Let's see what this guy has to say, and then after having he's going to present myths, okay? And after each myth, I'm going to decipher what he said in a way that I think is, more easily understood than how he says it. But anyway, here we go.
There's not a single thing they did that they can't still do. And the problem about too big to fail is even worse than it used to be. I'm not in the business of predicting when or the inevitability or when the next financial crisis is going to take place. But if you simply look at how the system is working now and compare it to, well, how was it working in 2007? How was it working in 2006? The system is every bit as dangerous now as it was back before the last financial crisis. There's been no successful financial reform in the United States and really not any in Europe as a result of all this. Okay, moving on. I'm going to talk about 6 myths briefly. 6 myths about private enterprise and markets. and 3 myths about government, and 2 myths about globalization. Neoliberal economics departs from the assumption that a private enterprise market economy is the best kind of economy we humans could hope for. That's its departing assumption, and proceeds to insist that this kind of economy functions best when unimpeded by government interference.
Okay, so that's the starting point, right? A free market system is the best motherfucking system that could ever be, that ever was or ever will be. Okay? It's free, okay? It creates so much freedom, right? Free enterprise, economic freedom, the best thing since sliced bread. Don't regulate it. But anyway, let me keep pushing.
That's the essential message of what neoliberal economics is. Now, earlier names for neoliberal economics were actually a little less obscure and more descriptive. It used to be called laissez-faire economics, literally French for leave it alone. That's the part about don't interfere. The government should not be interfering in the economy. And it's also was before the sort of term neoliberal came around, it was something that's just called free market economics. But in any case, the mythologizing begins by giving private enterprise and markets names that are literally dripping in virtue, referring to them as free enterprise and free markets. The second step is creating a series of myths that free enterprise and markets can be relied on to generate fair and efficient outcomes while miraculously providing everyone with economic freedom at the same time. Those are the 6 myths about private enterprise and markets that I'm going to talk about in a minute. And then the third step is to vilify government intervention as counterproductive violations of our freedoms. And the fourth step is to apply neoliberal logic to restructuring the global economy and conclude that all restrictions on the free movement of goods and investment among countries should be abolished. That's what neoliberal economics is. That essentially is what it consists of.
All right, so there you have it. Okay, shout out to Jabari Davis again. He says the idea that the economy is maximized when a guy can make a few billion, while the labor barely makes enough to live, is a shenanigan. A Huntsville joke. Shout out to him, man. Shout out to Hurricane Greg, man. Shout out to him, man. Appreciate the donation, sir. Appreciate that. Now look, this is the thing that confuses me about the whole narrative associated with neoliberalism, right? And it's the following. As a working person that makes under $250,000 a year, why is it that you are so dedicated to promoting the tenets of this particular form of economic theorization? I don't understand it. I need for somebody to explain to me why, if you make under $250K a year, you are committed to extolling the virtues and the principles associated with neoliberal thought. I personally do not understand it. I don't get it. And then not only that, most of the people who espouse these views, they never read books about economics. I'm not saying that there aren't people who have. I'm sure that there are. But I'm saying the vast majority of people who pontificate about neoliberal ideology, they've never even read or studied economics at all. They haven't even studied the history of economic thought on any level. And I'm confused. I can understand to some extent people not wanting to necessarily, be overtaxed or whatever the case may be. But I mean, for crying out loud, why would you endorse, as a person who makes under $250K a year, why would you support an economic philosophy or a point of view that doesn't like benefit you as a person who works for a living. Like, I don't get it. I don't understand it. Cassius Clay says it's called effective propaganda. It's really powerful. I guess. He says, why do poor people adopt rich people politics and philosophy? That's precisely it. I don't get it. I don't understand it. This is one of the reasons why I don't think that people are rational. I don't. I don't think people are rational. Anyway, Hitflix says why? Because they're soft-brained human beings who can't think past what they're told. But anyway, so let me push forward through this, man, because I'll be caught up all day.
Well, the first myth is that free enterprise equals economic freedom. No, it doesn't. What happens when people's economic freedoms conflict? What happens when the freedom of an employer to use his machinery as he chooses conflicts with my freedom as the employee to use my labor as I choose to and engage in my... What happens when we have somebody who exercises their freedom to pollute? Doesn't that conflict with somebody's freedom to live a life free from being polluted? So the first problem is that when you look at when you define economic freedom as the freedom to do whatever you wish with your person and property, there are all sorts of situations where people's economic freedoms are going to come into conflict with one another. Well, what decides whose freedom takes priority over whose freedom is the property rights system. Does the polluter have the property right? Does the pollution victim have the property right? So it's really the property rights. The first problem with this whole approach is, A, it doesn't resolve all the important issues of conflicting economic freedoms, and B, it just punts down the road and says, well, that'll be settled by the property rights system. Well, that's well enough, but somebody better ask, well, does a particular property rights system distribute decision-making authority in a way that is democratic and acceptable? And in the end, what it really comes down to is the property rights system distributes economic freedom so those with less property have less economic freedom and those with more property have more economic freedom. That's what the property rights system does. Now, there's one particular area where neoliberals have sort of had a lot to say, and that's about what about the conflict between the freedom of people to control their own laboring capacities and the freedom of employers to use their capital and machinery and equipment as they see fit? And the answer that they've always given to this is, oh, economic freedom is the freedom to use your person and property as you see fit, including the freedom to contract with others regarding its use. So in neoliberals' view, when an employee signs a wage agreement, signs a wage contract or goes to work, they have of their own free will and made a voluntary choice, yes, I am going to allow you to decide what's done in the workplace. You're going to get to decide what I produce and how I produce it. But I have freely entered into that contractual arrangement because I find it sufficiently beneficial. Well, the real problem with that is it really true that everyone is equally free to become an employer rather than an employee? And if you look at
let me stop it right here.
Simple
okay,
model,
so he said a lot right there. All you got to do is look at the bullet points, right? So I mean, ultimately, he said that this is the first myth of neoliberalism. But before I do that, let me acknowledge Mississippi Delta guy. He says, my mentor came from a wealthy family, called it a dirty secret of the wealthy, reverse Robin Hood, rob from the poor and give to the rich. That's funny, man. That's funny, bro. But I mean, look, getting back to it, man. I think so. The first myth is that free enterprise equals economic freedom. Okay, so the idea that it does, right? It's pervasive, right? It's an axiom of capitalist economies. But you got to question it. And the first thing, I mean, he talks about is, well, you know, like conflicting economic freedoms. Like one of the things you got to be mindful of is resource allocation. Okay. So in a free enterprise system, the allocation of resources is supposed to be determined by the market, which is supposed to in turn be influenced by individual choices. But what happens when one person's economic freedom to acquire a resource conflicts with another's, or a group of persons for that matter? For example, if a wealthy individual buys up land for development, does it infringe upon a community's access to that land for recreational and cultural purposes? Now, case in point, like the Geechee Gullah people, there have been developers coming trying to take, you know, their land. And the question is whether or not somebody has the right to do so, right? And then also you have to take into mind externalities, which people typically don't, you know, tend to take into consideration at all. So economic activities produce third parties, okay? So like for example, a factory owner may exercise their freedom to produce goods, but the goods they produce and in the way in which they produce them may create air and water pollution, which might affect community's health. All right, so one could argue, well, the corporation is free, you know, to build carburetors, but like they're creating toxic waste in the environment in which their plant exists. Okay, so that's one consideration, right? According to the myth number one, right? Another thing you got to take into consideration, I think this is the second bullet point of his, decision-making authority, right? So property rights are basically perceived as the cornerstone of free enterprise, right? But this system by itself can perpetuate inequality, and those with more property actually have more say in economic decisions, from business operations, political lobbying, so on and so forth, which some people see as inherently unfair, okay? Also, property rights systems also allow for the accumulation and inheritance of wealth, which can lead to generational disparities in economic freedom. Like, why should I, if I'm born to somebody poor, not have the same kind of decision-making power as somebody who was born, you know, from a family that's wealthy? I mean, we act as if there's all this freedom inhering in all of these relationships, but it's just not accurate, okay? One could argue, all right? The third point is, I think, well, the fourth point, I think, is dealing with, like, economic freedom for who, though? Or employer versus, you know, employee. Like, there are barriers to entry if you want to become an employer, one could argue. I mean, anybody can start a business, but can you actually maintain one and create a profit while, you know, maintaining one? Okay, so yeah, it's theoretically possible for anybody to start a business and become an employer. But there are practical barriers to that, man, like access to capital, people's educational level. Like in this culture, man, like it's a lot of black boys in some states that can't fucking read above the 4th to 5th grade level. The only business they can start is a crack business or a rap business, but I digress. Anyway, also networks can make, you know, you starting a business something that's unattainable for a lot of people. You know what I mean? And then also economic freedom for who? Again, like I said, not everybody starts at a level playing field. You got like other factors, which we haven't even mentioned yet, your race, your socioeconomic background. Some say gender, I'm not gonna go there, but I mean, some people say your gender, your class, your race. It can create barriers for your entry into, you know, opportunity of an economic kind. And then also, in the absence of social safety nets, the people who are economically disadvantaged are left with fewer choices, effectively reducing their economic freedom. Like the guy talks about, you know, like working for somebody. Like, dude, if the market is such that there are few jobs and they're only low paying ones, you can't afford, if you want to eat and pay your bills, you're forced to take on that job. I don't see like what's free about that, but that's just my opinion. You know what I'm saying? So this is my, but I'm gonna let him talk. I'm gonna let him go on ahead. But shout out to Mississippi Delta guy again, and also shout out to he says, if you want the truth, follow the money. Shout out to him, man. So let's keep pushing.
Of what would be the rational thing for people to do. The real issue is when people come to this labor market, if some come with more capital than others, that is going to settle who ends up being the employers and who ends up being the employees. Differences in preferences over whether I like being bossed around or I don't being, that's not what's going to settle it. Rational choice in a situation where you come to the bargaining table with unequal assets, that's where the coercion comes in. Sure, the employee freely chooses to go ahead and work for somebody else. Would they have freely chosen to be the one that showed up at the labor market without any capital? That's where the coercion, and that's where the coercion part comes in. Yeah, I think this analogy is actually very, very sort of useful to think about. Think about a slave system. A slave system where slaves apply to be slaves for...
Yeah, I'm going to skip the slave system because I just don't want to get caught into that kind of language and nomenclature right now. I'm not trying to hear all that slave shit right now. I'm not trying to hear it. So
the roles of employer and employee with self-management for all is better than even the least objectionable system of private enterprise. Free enterprise is efficient. Look, it is true. Sometimes competition for profit drives capitalists to favor more efficient technologies. But sometimes it drives them to favor less efficient technologies. I'm listing 3 situations in which profit maximization will require the capitalist to choose a less efficient technology over a more efficient technology.
I just want you to know this section is a little bit complex, just to let you know. Just a warning, okay? But I mean, the assumption is that the market is efficient. That's an underlying assumption of neoliberalism or classical economic theory or laissez-faire capitalism in general, right? The idea is that free markets are efficient, okay? Free enterprise is the most efficient form of exchange, okay? And he's, going to say not necessarily, okay? So let's move forward. Let's listen to see what he has to say.
When capitalists figure out whether a new technology is going to lower production costs, they don't take externalities into account. They only worry about the new technology's effect on the costs they pay for. If there's cost for society they don't pay for, if there are negative externalities, they do not get taken into consideration when a capitalist looks to see, is this new technology going to be more profitable or less profitable? Best point, think about, for 200 years, the price on carbon emissions has been 0. Anybody that wanted to spew carbon into the atmosphere was free to do so. You don't think that biased the choice of technologies over transportation and energy systems and what was chosen and what it certainly had an effect on what was profitable and what wasn't profitable. But part of why some things were profitable was because one of their serious costs was not being taken into account. And part of why other things were considered not profitable, other technologies were not considered to be profitable, was precisely because in an area where they were very beneficial, there was absolutely zero weight being put on the fact that they had a less damaging effect on the environment. If you've read the Piketty book, you know that R greater than G is the story of the month. Maybe it'll be the story of the year. I hope it's the story of the year. It turns out, and this is kind of a technical point, and I do work in this area. It turns out that if the rate of profit in the economy is higher than the rate of economic growth, that some inefficient, less efficient, capital-saving, labor-using technologies or changes will be adopted. Even though it's less efficient, you'll have some capital-saving, labor-using changes which will be adopted because they are profitable, even though they are less efficient, if the rate of profit is higher than the growth rate in the economy. And you'll have another problem, which is some efficient capital-using, labor-saving changes will not be adopted. Even though they are adopted, even though they are more efficient, they will be rejected because they will be less profitable. So this is a second area in which there's sort of a fundamental bias in the choice of technologies, where there's a wedge between what is actually more efficient and what is more profitable. There's a wedge that causes two kinds of, you get sins, I call them sins of commission, when you choose a less efficient technique because it's more profitable, and sins of omission when you reject a more efficient technology because it's less profitable. And these sins of commission and omission will be committed by profit-maximizing capitalists whenever R is higher than G. And if the higher R is compared to G, the more of these mistakes from society's points of view will be going on regarding the choices of technology by profit-maximizing capitalists. And the last way is inefficient technologies will be favored whenever their effect on bargaining power outweighs their effect on productivity. Suppose you have a new technology and it increases productivity by a little bit. Well, that means it's more efficient. We need to have it adopted. But suppose this new technology has an effect on the bargaining power between employers and employees. Suppose it enhances, in some way, it enhances the power the employees have when they go to bargain with the employer. If this bargaining power effect of the new technology is greater than the productivity effect, then a profit-maximizing capitalist will not adopt a more productive technology if the increase in productivity is smaller than the shifting of the balance of power and negotiations over what? Negotiations over the wage rate and negotiations over how hard the workers are going to have to work to get that wage. Okay, suppose when you take quality into effect, automobile industry. You can make automobiles on an assembly line. You can also make automobiles in work teams. Suppose, particularly when you take quality into effect, that is, bad cars that you have to pay for because they were broken, that the work team technology is actually a more efficient way to make cars. Yeah, but if you have people working in teams, they sort of learn to work, they can talk to each other, they communicate with one another, they conspire with one another against you, their employer. Whereas if everybody's on an assembly line, can't hear anybody else, has nothing to do with anybody else, you essentially have a more malleable workforce when it comes down to negotiating. So there is an example. And there's decent evidence to suggest, because we actually had an experiment. We had an experiment in the automobile industry where all of a sudden some companies, Volvo in particular, sort of shifted over to these team production, and what it did was it dramatically reduced defects. And it really wasn't any more time consuming. So it was a productivity enhancement. And yet that's not the way anybody's making cars anyplace. We're right back to the old assembly line. Well, how do you explain that?
So let me break down what he's basically trying to get at there. Look, I don't know if I'm going to make it more clear or make it more opaque, but I mean, look, the idea that free enterprise is inherently efficient is a widely accepted belief. However, it's not necessarily the truth, okay? So in the first case, he talked about efficiency versus profitability. And he talked about something R, right? The R there basically represents the rate of growth. That's what it symbolizes. That's what it's a variable for rate of growth, right? So ultimately, the rate of profit. It's not growth. The G is the growth. Okay, so anyway, if the rate of profit is larger, so again, just to make it clear, the R represents as a variable the rate of growth, right? If the profit exceeds the economic growth, companies will opt for technologies that are basically capital saving but labor using. Okay, that's what CSLU means in his, I guess, his sentence, right? Capital saving but labor using, right? So he says, if the profit R is larger than the rate of economic growth, then companies may opt for technologies that save money but use labor, even if they're less efficient. Even if it makes money and the labor strategy is less efficient, fuck it, because it's making money, right? Because the primary goal becomes maximizing short-term profit rather than long-term efficiency or sustainability. Again, I don't know if I made that more clear, but let me say it again, just so I could, be sure, right? Because it's complex, right? So the idea here is this: if the rate of profit is larger than economic growth, the rate of economic growth, companies will more than likely or may opt for technologies that save money, but they're not very efficient, right? They're less efficient, right? So the primary goal becomes maximizing short-term profits rather than the achievement of long-term efficiency or sustainability. I don't even know why this is an issue, because at the end of the day, everybody should know that, at the heart of capitalism is to make bread. Like, nobody gives a fuck how efficient the process is, but it's assumed that if the process is efficient, it will, lead to, more capital growth. But that's not necessarily always the case either, because there are situations in which some technologies are less efficient, but they're more profitable because it will create lower upfront costs, lower, subsidies, or it meets the market demand. Like, take, for example, right now, one could argue that, like, electrical technology or electrical power cars are more efficient than the use of fossil fuels. Now, we know this already, right? And it has less harm, one could argue, on the environment and so on and so forth, right? Especially if we, are sure to, get the, electricity from, like wind technology or like even dam power or something like that, right? But the idea here is that, or solar power, right? But the issue is, fossil fuels, it might be less efficient, but it makes more money, so nobody's gonna fuck with it, right? It's less efficient and more harmful compared to renewable energy sources, but at the current moment is more profitable, so nobody's gonna change it, right? Another thing he talked about was externalities are gonna be ignored when comparing production costs. So what does that actually mean? Basically, free enterprise ignores pollution when it calculates efficiency. Like, for example, if a transportation company chooses to use fossil fuels over electric vehicles, it's because it's cheaper. The negative externalities, like, for example, carbon emissions, are not factored into the cost because it doesn't cost them anything. not in the short term, right? But anyway, also, he talks about bargaining power, or at least, in the third little bullet point, he talks about power and technology, bargaining power and technology. He says new technologies can shift the bargaining power between employers and employees. Like, for example, automation may increase efficiency, but it also might give employers leverage against labor demands because the machines can replace the workers, right? And then also, technologies may be less efficient, but a company might favor them if they give one party, usually the employer, greater bargaining power, right? So, like, I think one of the examples that could be used is surveillance technologies that monitor employees. One could argue that shit is not efficient. It's a waste of money. To some degree, okay? Unless you want to factor in theft or something of that kind. But I mean, some industries, theft is relatively impossible. Like, I mean, you can steal some nuts and bolts or some shit like that from some companies, but like, you can't steal a car from a car company, man. Okay? Anyway, I think ultimately what he's trying to get to here is that the idea that free enterprise is always efficient is more nuanced than it seems, right? Efficiency in a free market system is often conflated with profitability, which can lead to choices that are less efficient from a societal or a long-term perspective. And also, the drive for efficiency can have implications on bargaining power and externalities, which are often not taken into consideration in traditional economic models. But I think the next point he's about to hit on, let me see what he's got to say, hold on.
Well, free enterprise is fair. In a world where the 85 richest people have more wealth than the poorest 3.5 billion, it's really hard to argue that capitalism distributes the burdens and benefits of economic cooperation fairly. But, even under, the first thing a neoliberal would tell you is, yeah, but the real world has many imperfections, and that doesn't mean my idealized idea of how a completely free capitalist economy would work would necessarily be so unfair. Even under the best of circumstances, in a free enterprise system, the grandson of a Rockefeller, who might not have to work a single day in his life, is still going to consume 1,000 times more than hardworking, productive people simply because he inherited shares of stock from his grandfather. There's just no way around that. Okay, myth number 4.
Okay, so let me stop there.
Markets.
Let me just say this. Look. The idea that free enterprise is inherently fair is deeply ingrained in capitalist society, bro. It just is, right? But like the guy said, like, the 85 richest people in the world have more wealth than the poorest 3.5 billion. That, to me, that's a stark illustration of extreme inequality, which can exist in a free enterprise system. I mean, just at the face of that, how can you come to the conclusion that that in and of itself is inherently fair? You got to do a lot of twists and turns in order to fucking make that appear fair, man. I mean, such a concentration of wealth in the hands of a few, it just raises, to me, serious questions about the fairness of the economic system. That's just my opinion. And then not only that, because, I mean, you know, we get to pass down wealth across generations. Like, he uses the example of a Rockefeller grandson, right? Who really doesn't have to work at all. But he's going to consume a lot more than people who work way harder than he ever has. So inherited wealth has the capacity to perpetuate inequality across generations, making the economic playing field far from level, which at the end of the day makes it far from fair. How could you characterize that like as inherently fair? Like at least, if like say for example, I'm not going to use that analogy, but stop saying that the fucking free market is fair. Just stop saying it, man. Like free enterprise, just stop saying it's fair, okay? And also, this system is based on the concept of meritocracy, right? So the idea where you're going to be rewarded based on your abilities and your efforts. But that's just not how the game goes, man. Like the reality is that there are other factors at play. Like what kind of connections do you have? They say it ain't what you know, it's who you know. The kind of education you have, like you might be a fucking dummy, but you went to an Ivy League school because your parents got you in or something like that. Like it's more complex than just, oh, well, you know, my talent and my capacities are going to get me to where I need to be. That's just not how the game works, man. Okay? Even luck can play a role in how you fare in a free market, right? And then also there are systemic barriers to some groups of people. We know for a fact that there were many black skilled workers who were more highly skilled than some of the, you know, the northern trade unionists, but they wouldn't allow them into the fucking union. If everything is about meritocracy, then why weren't they allowed into these unions, man? Why not? Why weren't they allowed into these unions? And ultimately, you know, look, the extreme wealth inequality that we have in systems like this one, it raises ethical questions about whether it's actually morally justifiable for so much wealth to be concentrated in the hands of so few people while billions of people live in poverty, bro. And in many cases, the wealthy, they build their riches on the labor of underpaid workers, both foreign and domestically, which further complicates this whole concept of fairness. But that's just me. I'm gonna go through two more of these and then I'm gonna pause because I don't wanna, I'll resume this on Sunday if you want me to, but these are just some challenges to this
freedom.
Some challenges to this whole thing.
Well, what are the problems with that? Well, the one that's been pointed out most often is in market elections, it's $1, one vote, not one person, one vote. I mean, who would argue for who would say that a political election was a fair election when some people get to vote 1,000 times and other people vote once? And yet that's exactly what goes on in market elections. Again, whether or not there's coercion in market exchanges, a market exchange is always voluntary. And unless somebody made a mistake, both people ended up better off for having made it. That doesn't necessarily mean the real key, the focus of attention, just like the focus of attention in terms of whether free enterprise is economic freedom is, wait a minute, when there's conflicts, it's the property rights system that decides. Here again, it's what people arrive at the marketplace with. It's the situations they arrive in that basically determine whether or not there's coercion or not coercion. How about external parties? We've known since the writings of Pigou, famous British economist, Cambridge University in the early 1920s. We've known about externalities. Sometimes they're called neighborhood effects. Now we tend to call them externalities. Well, wait a minute. In the market decision-making process, the buyer and the seller come to an agreement. they're the ones at the table. They're the ones who have power over the decision. An externality is there are other people out there who were affected by that decision, and the whole point is they weren't at the bargaining table. That's why they're called external parties. So every time a market exchange, every time there's an external effect from a market exchange, think about it. There are a whole bunch of disenfranchised people out there. All the people who suffered these external effects were disenfranchised from the decision-making process because the decision-making process was done by the buyer and the seller only. Hard to think of that as markets equal economic freedom. I mean, the last myth is that there really are only two choices. It was a famous British economist named Alec Nove, who in 1983 threw down the gauntlet in a book called The Economics of Feasible Socialism, ironically. He said, look, there are only two choices. At the same time that Margaret Thatcher was saying there's no choice or alternative to neoliberal capitalism, Alec Nove was saying there is no choice between either markets or authoritarian planning. There simply is no alternative. He was basically arguing that the idea that we could do something called democratic planning is basically a myth, and people should stop deceiving themselves. Well, as Jason and some people here with me know, I've spent a good part of my life basically outlining exactly how you could engage in participatory planning. It's not authoritarian planning, and it's not a market. So whether you like it or not, it's just not true that there is no alternative.
So
it's
look,
sort of
I'm gonna stop here.
The oldest play in the playbook.
Yeah, so what he's doing right there is talking about, basically people say, well, if it's not free market activity, then it's Marxism. You're advocating Marxism. Like, nah, well, maybe not really. I mean, it's called a false dichotomy, okay? Like, either it's this way or the alternative is the exact, opposite of the way that we're doing it. Like, come on, man. Like, that's not the only alternative, right? So I'm going to open it up, man, if anybody wants to have a conversation about this. But I do want to go through what he just said, though. And I'm gonna leave it go because I don't want to do this for 2 hours because it's too abstract. Okay, but ultimately what he's saying is this: there are people who say that the market basically equals economic freedom, right? And it's not as simple as it seems, because in a market system, economic power translates into decision-making power. Unlike democratic elections where, like the guy says, one vote, each person gets one. But in a market election, right, it's different. $1 equals one vote. So if you got more money, you get more of a choice. Now tell me how that actually works towards freedom for somebody who has less money than somebody else. And let's say, for example, so I guess Bill Gates' son is more free than me, I guess. Or should be. But I think all of this goes out to say that, this kind of schema inherently favors people with more financial resources, which to me skews the concept of freedom towards people who can afford it. So freedom, you can buy freedom. Okay. And then, people who are wealthy and corporations, they can significantly influence market outcomes. They can set prices. They can determine what goods and services are going to be offered, which further consolidates their economic power. The average person can't do that. Okay. And also, the guy was talking about initial bargaining positions or initial conditions, right? yeah, okay, a market exchange is voluntary, but you can't ignore the conditions that participants bring to the market when they come there. Like if you're born into poverty, you're going to have fewer options and much less bargaining power than someone who's born into money. Which makes, one could argue, the exchange inherently unequal and potentially coercive, is what he's saying. And then not only that, he's also saying the very idea of voluntary exchange has embedded within it the assumption that individuals have so many options to choose from, which necessarily isn't the case. It's not necessarily the case. And I think I alluded to this earlier. If you have a job market that's high in unemployment, people who want to enter the labor market have little choice but to accept lower wages and poorer working conditions. That's just how it goes. Now tell me, like, what's necessarily, free about that? I just don't get it. And then also he talks about externalities. I mentioned this earlier already. He's mentioned it himself as well. But markets fail to account for the impact of transactions on third parties, typically, okay? Because like a factory polluting the river might affect the local community, but the external parties aren't actually typically privy to the decision-making process. They're left out. The system doesn't interpolate them into decision-making processes. And then not only that, there's systematic disenfranchisement because people without power are just basically excluded from market decisions altogether, even when those decisions might have a direct impact on their lives. One of the things that arises in my mind is gentrification. Or even decisions about public goods or environmental regulations. Like average persons don't have a say. And black people live in like some of the worst environmentally or eco-friendly neighborhoods in America. I remember, like, if you're from St. Louis, man, there used to be a fucking, like, I mentioned this earlier, like a carburetor plant. I think it was on Grand and I forget the street, man, but it's right next to Beaumont High School. This fucking carburetor plant was there for fucking decades. And, when you thought about it, you were like, well, why has no one ever fucking purchased the plot of land that this carburetor plant has been on for like, I don't know how long? Well, one of the reasons nobody bought it was because it was a fucking toxic waste hazard. I mean, you're talking about decades of waste accumulated at a carburetor plant. Chemicals, right? Just sitting in the hood. Kids playing around it and shit. And nobody's doing anything about it, right? So the whole point is that, look, poor people are typically left out of market-based decisions, okay? And then this begs the question, right, about what's fair and what's not fair, right? And he talks about alternatives to hierarchical planning as it pertains to, market-based decisions. Like they don't just have to be hierarchical the way that they are, right? So one alternative to authoritarian planning, he says, is democratic or horizontal planning. You might not like it, but it is a possibility. There's a potentiality there, okay? Where decisions are made collectively by those who are impacted or affected by them, okay? And one could argue this is more inclusive than just the top-down mechanism where, whatever's to the benefit of the owner, that's the one that goes, right? And then also, yeah, I'll leave it there because I don't want to let this drag out for like fucking 3 hours with we doing this. But having said all that, what's up, Big Kev? What's cracking? But also, before you do that, I just want to read this. He says, Harold George does, and thank you for the donation, by the way. He says, I just read about a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund company paying $7 million in fines for fraud and market manipulation. The free market is great for them when laws and crimes are negotiable. Yes, indeed, sir. Look, the funny thing is this, man. Like, you could be it this way, man. Look, I went to a federal prison for doing some shit I ain't had no business doing. So, okay, so I did what I had to do when I was there, okay? Did my little time, whatever. But I was also there with motherfuckers that committed white-collar crimes, man, and stole millions of dollars, bro. Millions. Millions. Motherfucking millions. And they had less time to do than I did. And I ain't steal nothing from nobody. I ain't saying, you know, like selling drugs is a good thing. It is not, okay? But all I'm saying is I didn't steal nothing from a dope fiend or a dope man or nobody else. I didn't steal shit. Definitely not millions of dollars. Be careful, man. What's cracking with you, man? You there?
Yeah, man. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you pretty good, man.
All right, perfect. Yeah, man. It's interesting because I was just watching a few videos from like Wall Street Millennial earlier, man. And you know, the thing that people don't, the thing about neoliberalism is that, you know, this idea of like laissez-faire economics. This sounds wonderful in theory. It's wonderful in theory, you know, just like communism. It sounds wonderful in theory, but in the reality of it is that, you know, when you don't have any type of regulations or stipulations against like, when there's no type of speed limit, so to speak, put on like people that are billionaires or people that are corporate executives and whatnot, it's going to be basically the Wild West of fraud. I mean, you can look at some of the examples over like the last 25, 30 years. I mean, look at Nortel Network. I think it's like Nortel Network, Enron, Archegos Capital, Lehman Brothers, Celsius, FTX, BitConnect, OneCoin, Theranos. Like you could just keep naming. I'm talking about multi-billion-dollar businesses that either collapsed either due to rampant fraud or due to hyper aggressive risk taking. You know what I mean? So
right. Like, but here's the thing.
Yeah.
This is the thing that fucks me up, right? Like, okay, so falling away from being abstract, I did the best I could to try to explain what this guy was talking about. I don't know if I hit the mark or not, but I mean, look. Why is it, okay, human beings exist in corporations, right? Correct? Human beings are the ones that run corporations, correct?
Yeah.
Human beings are the ones that run governments, correct?
Yep.
And every other kind of institution in between, correct?
That's correct.
So why is it that the behavior of human beings is expected to be more morally upright in one domain as opposed to in the other? I don't get it. And and I just want to answer this question from Lithium. No one is coming to save you. I don't like the right, but I don't like champagne socialist, liberal, limousine liberals. Like, how many limousine liberals do you see, bro? Hey, Jason, man, come on through, man. You have, like, if you want to come through, man, please come. This is a friend of mine. If you're listening right now, just please come through. All you got to do is just come on through.
Yep. But yeah, man. So like I said before, man, like you said, and I won't be on here for much longer. But yeah, like again, you know, you can't not have any rules and just hope that people are going to play fair based off of the honor system. But you also can't have too many rules, because when you have too many rules, that stifles a lot of business growth, and you know, a lot of business growth for people that are like small and mid-sized businesses. You know what I mean? Like, you choke out the environment when you have too many rules. If you don't have any rules at all, you're gonna let all of like the corrupt billionaires whatnot operate with impunity. And again, that's how you get stuff like WorldCom and Enron and all these other, you know, multi-billion-dollar frauds and stuff like that, because, you know, thinking that you shouldn't have to operate with any impunity. I mean, if you want to look at the failure of neoliberal philosophy, just look at the whole cryptocurrency.
And this is the thing. This is the thing that kills me, right? So this guy just basically is dumping on, you know, like leftists. Like, bro, look, okay, so look, here's my thing, right? If you make under 250K, what is your incentive to be a neoliberal? I would like to. I want that question answered.
Well, I think what he's saying is more so it's like this, Green Gorilla. Okay, it's one thing to be like, okay, agree with some leftist policies when it comes to like worker safety and stuff like that, and like, you know, legal protections against abuse from like middle management and from like upper management, especially for large scale companies and whatnot. Okay, that's one thing. But what he's talking about with these liberals being liberals, again, it's like they're trying to blow smoke up your ass about this mystical, magical, socialist, communist utopia that's going to magically whisk all of our problems away, and how a command economy is this magic pill that's going to solve poverty, even though we've seen over and over again that it's not. I think that's more so what he's referring to. Like if you're say for example, if you agree with some leftist position, like say for example, like how you know, public transit needs to be made more robust, you know, you can make an argument there. You could say, okay, you know, there needs to be worker safety regulations to avoid the bullshit that happened in East Palestine, you know, because, you know, the damn CEO is just too much of a cheap bastard to just simply update the brakes on the train. Totally preventable accident, you know what I mean? I could see, you know, being on the left when it comes to those things. But where I think what he's saying, where people get off the bus at, is when they try to, again, go for the whole intersectionality, identity politics, and social constructs,
Bro,
and a thousand genders. It's like, all right, man.
I don't see what this has
like,
to do
I'm
with
out,
gender.
You know what I mean?
But look, what does this have to do with gender?
No. I'm saying
this is what I'm saying. Me having a conversation about neoliberalism and the market, abstracted away from anything related to who gets to fuck who, having a conversation about the market, cut off and truncated from discussions about gender politics. I haven't mentioned gender politics.
Oh no, I'm not talking about you, Green Grill. I'm saying what the person is saying.
I understand. I get it.
Yeah.
But right now, I'm having a conversation about the market. I'm having a conversation about a social and political ideal related to economics. I'm not having a conversation about the left's understanding of gender or race politics at all. Okay? Now, but what I will say is this. As a person who belongs to a racial group that has been systematically disenfranchised, and even when black people operated in the market in such a way that they made gains for themselves, what ended up happening? What happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma?
Oh yeah, I agree. Yeah, like you said, how like a lot of these businesses were like burned down and stuff like that, and a lot of these people were chased off their land and whatnot. And again,
precisely. So at the end of at the end of the day, all I'm saying is this: I'm having a conversation abstracted away from anything else. Like we're not talking about because to me, this is where the politics really needs to be. It needs to be economic based as far as I'm concerned. And the reason why it needs to be, to me, the reason why it needs to be is because we've talked about the politics of recognition for too long, and it's been taken over, it's been hijacked by white women. So the politics of recognition is dead.
Exactly.
They burned it up.
Yeah,
it's
done.
And
that's what I'm saying. Like as far as like, you know, you can agree like the whole like, that's what I mean as far as like the whole, I guess you could argue center left position as far as like you said, arguing that yes, you know, big businesses shouldn't be allowed to operate with impunity, you know, having a limit on like corporate monopolies and monopsonies, you know what I mean? Worker and safety regulations, especially for you know, the handling of dangerous chemicals in regards to like water pollution and stuff like that. You know, the practical stuff. That's what I'm saying. Like you can make a definitely a damn good case on that. You know what I mean? The problem, like you said, is that most of the time is that, you know, most of these conversations revolve around the politics of recognition more so than the economics. And like what you're talking about,
what I would like to do, and what I would like to do is shift the conversation away from the politics of recognition, because as I said before, I want you to think about it. The politics of recognition are cheap. And I'm going to tell you why. Because no one has to pay for it. No one has to do anything. I'm going to tell you how you resolve the politics of recognition. You let people in the bathrooms. What does that cost anybody? Or you put, say, for example, a trans person on a Bud Light can. What does that cost anybody? Like, how does that actually improve the material conditions of most persons' lives? Now, I'm not taking anything away from people who, who decided they want to be trans. If that's what you want to do, man, by all means, you go ahead, you go right on ahead and do it. Okay? But what I'm saying is, it doesn't cost the government or a corporation anything to do that. They don't have to redistribute any wealth. They don't have to ensure that people earn a decent living, that people have access to health care and decent housing and great, like education. None of that is taken into consideration in the context of the New Left's conversations. The conversation needs to be pulled back into economics, because that's the traditional politics of the left has always been about like labor and money and distribution and resources. Now it's become about tokenism and like who gets seen and who's invisible or who's not invisible, and how many tokens can occupy positions in like structures that are already unfair. Why would I latch my fucking self? Why would I hitch my, my wagon to that train? I don't understand why I should do that. Like, I get it. I understand it to a certain extent. But at the end of the day, these conversations on the left, man, like they have become less economic and they've become more about who sees me, which to me, y'all can continue to do it, but it doesn't get you anything. It doesn't get you anything. And all I'm saying is, if you're making under 250K, how does neoliberalism work to your advantage?
I don't necessarily, Mr. Green Gorilla, I agree it doesn't work to anyone's advantage, but I just feel that because like our system is never going to improve, because again, I mean, people try to show up pretty hard for Bernie 2 times, and the neoliberal establishment shut it down. So I think people should go balls to the wall and try to succeed the best that they can under this crappy system. But I'll stop.
No, you don't have to go away. I want you. Look. I don't mind. You're respectful, okay? So you can disagree. Anybody can disagree, okay? The only thing I like to do is to say, okay, like if we're gonna have a conversations about how the market is, let's talk about the market on its own terms. And let's use conversations that aren't just about, like cliches. Let's dig into the bowels and entrails of economics itself. Let's talk about economics. Let's not talk about, economics as a black person, as a woman, or let's just talk about economics by itself. And most people don't do that because they haven't read any economic theory. They haven't read Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations. They haven't read any John Locke. They haven't read any John Stuart Mill. They haven't read any David Ricardo. They don't even know what the fuck they're talking about. They're just regurgitating viewpoints that they've heard on talk shows. And I don't have a problem with it, but I'm like, come on, man, we gotta be more savvy than that. That's the only thing I'm asking for. Like, can we have a little bit more of a sophisticated conversation surrounding these kind of issues? And I'm saying, look, if you're if you're a person that makes under 250K, why wouldn't you be advocating for an economic policy that looks after your needs in terms of healthcare, in terms of work, like availability and like remuneration that allow you to have affordable housing and a comfortable retirement? Why would you be opposed to that? And this is a question for white, like broke motherfuckers too, because look, let's face it, man. I live in Huntsville, Texas right now. These motherfuckers ain't eating like that. I I ain't trying to be disrespectful to them, but I mean, I'm surrounded by white people. And these motherfuckers are not wealthy, man. But why would they vote for neoliberal policies that don't actually work to their economic interests?
Because they're probably going to get an inheritance from a random uncle, grandfather, whatever. I think a lot of white people, especially many on the left, they cosplay, oh, I'm poor, I have solidarity. And I wasted a lot of years on that. But ultimately, they're going to be fine.
I mean, hey, you know, my only thing is, you know, as black folks who've been kept out, like black men specifically, like we do okay in the market when we actually get there. To some degree, but like most black people are not like, the wealth gap is tremendous, man, for us. It's humongous, man. Okay? It's not like we are in these higher tax brackets and we're taking advantage of capital gains tax cuts and shit like that. It's not like we're there. So why are we advocating for a viewpoint that doesn't really actually match up to our own financial and political and socioeconomic situation? That's all I'm asking. I mean, I don't know how much money you got in the bank, but like, I ain't sitting on a cool motherfucking 300 million or you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not sitting on that.
I think you mentioned on like another stream that like you have like a couple rental properties. Like millennials and Zoomers are going to be lucky to have a property, and I don't know. I don't know if I'm of the mindset that I'm just going to keep trying to train for my IT certs, which I'm currently doing. But I don't like with the great transfer of wealth that's going to happen with the boomers to these white millennials. I don't think there's going to be any fundamental changes any time in the pipeline. I think there should, like you're saying, but I don't know.
Well, the thing I think though is that I think, like I said before, I think the left has moved to the politics of recognition and has moved away from material, distributive justice-based issues, and the party is trying to like thread the needle between, you know, like, okay, we want to talk about what we consider to be cutting edge social justice issues because they want to piggyback on the civil rights movement and all this kind of stuff. But they still want to be able to hold on to, you know, they still play the race card when they need to, or they play the race game when it's convenient for them, right? Even Bernie did that, okay? So I get it, but my whole thing is I just got an issue with neoliberalism. I just don't think, first of all, like I said, I don't think it's accurate to begin with because I don't think they're right about what they say human beings are like. And then not only that, I don't think the economics is a science at all anyway. I just don't think it is. I just think it's a fucking, you know, philosophical orientation, and I think it's wrong. And then also I just think like, look, we only live one life. We only got one planet. And here's the other thing that I want you to consider, though, and I want you to think about this, man. Like, the position of classical economic theory is that the best kind of life to live is a life where you just think like incessantly about accumulating possessions and shit like that. Like what? How in and of itself is that a life that's like live well? I just don't get it. I'm not saying it like, let me be clear. Having money and resources, I think, is a necessary component of you living a good life. Okay? However, I don't think it's a sufficient condition of you being able to live a good life. Because you got rich people who are fucking miserable. You got rich people like take for example, a black example, right? Whitney Houston, extremely wealthy. Famous. Has everything anybody could ever want, access to anything that they could want at any moment in terms of material. Look how she went out. Or a host of people. So many people you can allude to. What about feeling like you're part of a community. Whatever happened to that? That's just thrown out of the window. We don't even think about that shit at all. What about, you know, like being a part of a faith tradition or something, like, or looking at the world like there's something bigger than just you?
I don't know. I think a couple of things like killed that. Like 9/11, especially. I believe, like, I was like 90s kid. Like, I remember there was just way more optimism, and I don't know. I still have neighbors that I look out for, and they look out for me. But it just feels like all of that has deteriorated. Social trust I think died after COVID, and you know, people getting mad about boop mandates or injection mandates and all that. Like everyone just doesn't trust each other, and everyone is just like, it just I thought millennials and Zoomers were going to be different, but I'm reading articles that are saying, oh, millennials are turning to the right or becoming more conservative, and it just feels like if everyone's going to be out for themselves, why should I be virtuous anymore? You know, that I should be out for myself too. And you know, I'm the poorest sibling of all my relatives and stuff, and I get reminded every day that I'm poor and stuff. But I don't know. This system makes you feel miserable if you're poor.
They talk to you like that? Your own family talks to you like that?
Not necessarily, but it's just like I have siblings that are like doing pretty well. One is like a teacher that's doing pretty well, and one is I think she does like fitness instruction or whatever. But it's just like they're like, oh, you know, if you just work harder, everything will be better and stuff. Oh, you need to try harder. And it's just like, it's just survivalship bias is so prevalent in America, and like I don't know, people are just out for themselves, and I think that really came to a head in the past 20-something years.
Yeah, you know, my thoughts are this, man. Look, you got a lot of unhappy people in America, man. You think this country is breeding like social functioning, or do you think it's breeding social dysfunction?
We're like at fall of Rome territory, it seems. And
I think so.
Don't care.
I think so. Because look, okay, here's the classical model of economics, right? Right. Basically, it assumes that individuals are rational agents. Like, you're not and this is like all from Descartes, right? I'm a thinking thing. If I'm anything else, I'm a thinking being. And one of the things I think about is that I can doubt everything except for me. Everything around me can be an illusion, but I'm the only real thing that I know for certain is really real. Like, this is the start of modernity, all right, Descartes, okay? And you see a little bit of that kind of solipsistic paranoia run amok through, you know, classical economic theory. The idea is everybody is like, they're thinking things who are seeking to do what's best for themselves at every given moment, right? And that's a reductionist view, and it simplifies human behavior to a mathematical equation. But it ignores other complexities of human psychology and social interactions, man. So they call, like, okay, modern philosophers call man Homo economicus, right? The self-interested, rational individual. And it's an abstraction for building economic models. But it's far from a complete picture of human nature and what we're supposed to be about. I mean, for some reason, the corporations in this country have got people locked into the idea that the sum total of the possibility of your life is that you go to work, bust your ass off as an employee for 40 to 60 hours a week, and that's how you attain a good life. You get to buy consumer electronics and go on vacations here and there, and you get to buy some name brand clothing and some shit like that, or, you know, go to Trader Joe's or Whole Foods and buy you some food, and you start the process over and over and over and over again. And that's the good life. And now my motto is that human beings are not rational calculators, but emotional reciprocators who seek meaningful interactions, and they aim to thrive not just economically, but in their environments. So my view is more aligned to a holistic view of human nature, which acknowledges not just rationality, which I don't have a problem with rationality. I just think Plato and Descartes are wrong about what human nature is like. You're not just reflective. You like to kick it. You got to have friends. You have to have interactions, right? You got to be part of a community to some degree. What about social bonds? What about having a sense of purpose? What about like not just having money, but having emotional well-being? I just, you know, like, so a person I would look at like, okay, there is a Amartya Sen. I don't know if you ever heard of him, but it's spelled Amartyasen, right? Look him up, Amartya Sen. Also, you'll often see him connected to Martha Nussbaum, but forget about Martha Nussbaum for a minute and just think about Amartya Sen. I mean, he basically says, look, you got to understand human beings in terms of capabilities or capacities, and that's what you know leads to them having well-being, and it moves beyond just economic utility, which I don't have an issue with. But come on, man, it ain't just about how much money you got. Because you got to think, man, like, say, for example, right now, 50 Cent. He got a lot of bread, don't he? But he ain't got a relationship with his son. We just saw Kirk Franklin. Got a lot of money, don't he? Superstar, got a whole bunch of, you know, Grammys and shit like that. He ain't know who his fucking daddy was.
Didn't he have like a corn addiction in the aughts or something like that? I don't know if I'm like misremembering things, but
say that again.
I think he had a tough time. Corn addiction. I don't want to say the word.
Yeah, he was Pornhub. He was jacking off. Which, I mean, a lot of Americans are doing. They're not going nowhere. They're not interacting with anybody. They got Jergens and jacking off the fucking OnlyFans. Come on, man. He ain't the only one. But one can argue like this world we live in is fucked up, man. And the system is leading to social anomie. I don't know if you ever heard of that term, but like it's like a kind of uneasiness in the populace.
Yeah, I've never seen it like this before in my life. Like 2022, I was like, I just got disgust with this country. Like just how, like, it just seems like now with like the hyperinflation and stuff, it just feels like people get off on cruelty now to a certain degree. And I tried to explain this to my boomer parents, and they just, again, it's like people like Jason Black said, like the boomers just want a peaceful death. They don't care about what's going on now. They're not really looking into it anymore. But us.
The boomers lived in an era where basically they were like post New Deal, post World War II babies, man. And the economy was booming for them, man. Like they could get a college education for little next to nothing, man. They when they went to school, education wasn't perceived as a commodity that people were like trying to make like a shit ton of bread off of.
Yeah, I think like UCal was like free up until like the 70s or 80s, like BGS said.
Bro, you can go to college and pay the shit as you go. You understand?
Yeah, my dad did that. Yeah, he paid for his master's
shit by working at a diner or some shit like that. They have inflated the price of a college education to something that's akin to what? Like a state institution, like could be anywhere between $15,000 to $20,000 a semester, bro. To me, that's just it's unconscionable. If you ask me, it's like the people from the boomer era. They had it better than what we have. Their money can buy more than what our money can buy, and they could go to work without having to go to college and still find a job where they can get a retirement and benefits. and have some money to spend on, you know, some shit that like normal people ought to be able to spend money on to enjoy the fact that they actually have worked as a laborer for all of their lives. Like my father, man, that motherfucker didn't go to college, man.
Modernity.
He worked his ass off. He worked his ass off for 2 jobs for 25 to 30 years. And now he makes more than some people make in retirement than they've ever made the entirety of their whole lives.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I wish, like, I don't know, it just seems like our grandparents were just way happier and stuff. Like my grandparents, like, except like I think that my grandma, my dad's side, they all lived to be 80, 90. And like my great grandparents over in Africa, they lived like well into like 90, 100. It was a regular thing. But we're in modern life where we have this toxic neoliberalism, we're eating all this GMO food, and we're in this hyper competitive atomized environment. And it's just, I think that's why you're seeing a lot of people like being like, oh, reject modernity and race tradition, or why you see the black pill or trad wives just trending. I'll drop off. I enjoyed talking to you, Dr. Green Gorilla. I'll listen to the comments, but thank you.
Thank you, man. Appreciate your contribution, man. What's up, Passport? What's good with you, dog?
Oh, well, thanks for having me up, Dr. Gigi.
No, man, you're welcome. You're most definitely welcome.
So I'm curious, you as a doctor in philosophy, I want to get your take on this. So how much energy do you think goes into selling people continuing to believe in this system? Because if you're struggling, and most people are struggling, I mean like making under 100,000. If I'm under 100,000 and you do one thing wrong, you get someone pregnant, you college loans, bad medical accident, one thing, you're struggling. So how do you keep people believing in a system like this from a philosophical point of view?
I talked about this the other day. Even like, okay, so like I read a paper from Kimberly Crenshaw, and it was just building. It's called Race Retrenchment. I think Race Reform and Retrenchment, Anti-Discrimination. You know, something about the transformation of anti-discrimination law. Some bullshit like that. I can't remember the exact title of the article, but one of the things that she talked about is Antonio Gramsci and the concept of hegemony, and within it. Embedded within it is the idea that like this reality is something that has to be, is fated to be. Like there are no alternative possibilities. So, I mean, you know, like people have basically consigned themselves to the system.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's like, hey, there's nothing we can do other than, you know, to accept the system the way that it is, and it's not fair, but, you know, all you got to do is work hard and, you know, like consign yourself to your task, and, you know, you can do something. And, you know, I'm saying, look, man, this is one of the things you have to be able to do is to understand that the neoliberal turn in politics, it took time to develop. And they were patient. Like, I mean, think about the people like Frederick Hayek, Milton Friedman. It took time for people like Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher to finally pick up their viewpoints and to use their ideas as bedrocks for their own kind of economic policies. But, I mean, ultimately what it is, as far as I'm concerned, it's an excuse for people who are uber wealthy to continue to get more and more uber wealthy. While everybody else looks on along and says that, well, the arguments that they're making seem like they're sound to me, because there's a normative kind of conceptualization that's embedded within the whole concept of free markets anyway. And here's what it basically says, and I think it's wrong. If you work hard, you'll be successful.
That's right.
If, you know, like the reason you're not successful is not because there's something awry in the way that the system is arranged, it's because you didn't really actually do your due diligence to become successful in the first place. There's so much opportunity out here that The reason that you're not successful is because you wasted and squandered that opportunity. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't try, man. You should. I'm not saying you shouldn't like bust your ass off like a dog to become successful in life and to thrive. But I'm saying, like, okay, at the end of the day, man, it's not just about the accumulation of material shit, though. That's not the only thing that makes your life worth living. Okay? Again, emotional well-being is a must. Being able to develop social bonds with other people is a must.
Agreed.
Because we're social animals, man. Okay? Having a sense of purpose outside of the context of going to your job is a must. Okay? These factors are overlooked in classical economic theory or neoliberal economic theory. It's not there. And I'm the type of individual, I like to update things. I don't have a problem. Like I understand philosophy from a historical point of view. So like I understand what Plato was thinking and why he thought the way he thought during his time. I understand why Aristotle thought the way he thought. I understand it. I understand why Descartes thought how he thought and how, Thomas Hobbes and John Locke and Rousseau and Immanuel Kant, and I understand why they thought the way they thought during the time in which they developed their thought. I understand, the people who came after them, Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, and Hegel, and all of those guys. And I understand why they thought the way they thought, okay? But damn it, we're still operating under we got an old OS.
Yeah.
Like we on Windows 5 or some shit. It's time to update, man. I'm just saying, let's update the software and let's get a new system, man.
Well,
the old system. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Well, I think in America, selling that lifestyle of you could possibly be rich. I think that's that's the drug. That the drug is you don't want to be average when you could possibly be rich and you could have everything, and everybody wants that, and so nobody is satisfied with sacrificing a part of that to live a relatively normal life, and I think that's one reason why you're just seeing people lose it, because it's unsustainable.
Yeah, man. Look, make your money, man. I'm not saying don't try to make your money. By the way, shout out to David White, man. Shout out to David White, man. He deserves some honors, man. Appreciate you, sir. Appreciate you.
Fucking.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I appreciate that kind and generous donation. Says from the official sponsor of the G with the PhD, Black Men. Shout out to him, man. Thank you, man. And look, I know this is boring. This is not the most titillating subject matter, but it's important to me. Okay.
Well, I think it's at the basis of why there's so much fussing to begin with. I don't have what I think I should have or what my parents had at this age, and it's somebody's fault, right? And so there's the finger pointing and a man should do this, or I should be able to live my life this kind of way, expressing this kind of sexuality, and you're oppressing me, as opposed to just feeling like you're a part of some kind of community and assuming a role in it, which we clearly don't have anywhere close to what we used to. And I think that frustration is showing itself in identity politics. I think that.
So here's the thing, right? You can have 6 figures, right? It's cool, man. Look, have your 6 figures, bro. But them 6 figures, man, that ain't really shit in today's economy, no way. I mean, it's not, bro. It ain't really a lot, man. To me, it's not income that's the issue. It's wealth. It's safety and security. And people know that their lives are like not safe and secure. They know everything is precarious for us, man.
Going to Walmart is precarious. Like
Hey man,
what good
I
is
fuck with Walmart, man. You know what? When I was younger, I was talking to BGS earlier today, man, about this shit, man. When I was younger, man, I used to wear nothing but polo and shit like that. Like I wore like I'm talking about 88, from 85 to 88. Because when I went to grade school, I had to wear like blue pants, a white shirt, and like a uniform. So I couldn't dress like a preppy motherfucker. But like from 85 to 89, I didn't wear shit but polo, Cole Haans, Tommy Hilfiger shit. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like I had to be decked and draped in that bullshit.
Yeah.
And the question is why?
Why? That's right. You have to show value with what you put on your body. That's right.
I start thinking about things. I start thinking like, damn, like why am I so materialistic? You know what I'm saying? Like I still got like, you feel the urge because I think human beings want to like this, distinguish themselves from others and to try to demonstrate their fitness for anything from reproduction to developing social connections. Okay. But damn, man, like, I mean, I learned at some point, man, I'm not about to spend $70, $80 on a shirt, bro. I'm not about to do that, man. Like for what? And now you got young black people, man, out here, like these rappers and shit. You know how much a pair of Fendi sneakers cost, man?
Oh, man. Well, but better question is, how much does it cost to make them? Because that markup used to be, we'll make it in a first world country. Now you're moving production to Malaysia, Indonesia, and you're just searching for the cheapest place to make it, to make the same pair of sneakers.
And we're the ones fueling that fucking lifestyle because we never had shit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, well, because I never had shit, I'm gonna show somebody that I'm somebody.
That's right.
I'm gonna show somebody I'm somebody, right? So I personally, nigga, I'm gonna go motherfucking to Target and get me one of them graphic tees. And they used to have some the dude named the own Mosimo. He went to prison for a minute for doing something he wasn't supposed to be doing. So, but he used to have like these athletic cut V-neck T-shirts and shit. Man, them shirts cost $10. Boy, I was looking fat. I could pull a lot of. I'm about to say something I shouldn't say. I'm gonna stop. Put a lot of nice ones, man, in them shirts, man. Yeah. But I mean, I always made sure that I wear Chuck Taylors, but they'll be leather ones though. You know what I'm saying? Or I buy dress shoes. I spend my money on my Cole Haan still, though. I still believe in getting decent shoes, though. But you ain't gonna catch me in too many. I do have some Air Jordans. I ain't gonna lie. But you ain't gonna see me like just breaking my bank on buying bullshit. I wear Levi's. I'm not buying. I ain't gonna say I haven't at any time bought True Religions and shit like I have. But like some bullshit, man. Fuck that shit. You gotta, man.
Well, if you live in, I'm sorry.
No, it's the consumer culture, man. It's that consumer culture shit.
Christmas. What is Christmas about when you go to school the next day? What did how expensive was your biggest gift? And it's this race to see who got the newest game. And so Kmart can put the new NES game at $100 when this piece of plastic with a little piece of chip in it, right? And that's the culture. Our culture is that.
But lithium,
consumerism.
But peep this though. Like shout out to lithium. But peep it. You know what kind of car that Warren Buffett drives? Guess what kind of? Oh, hold on. Let me give Dr. Thunder the link. Dr. Thunder, let me give him the link. And Zan, I'm giving him the link. My bad. I didn't see y'all asking for the link. Yeah. Guess what kind of car Warren Buffett drives, man?
I don't know what kind of car he drives, but I saw a picture of who's the Amazon dude driving a Honda Accord when he was worth $10 billion.
Bezos.
So it can't. Yeah. On 60 Minutes, driving an old Honda Accord. He said it works. He's probably driving a Buick? I don't know.
Man, old boy, man, drives a Prius.
There you go. There you go. Saving money
but
on
Kanye
gas.
made a song. What you think I rap for? To drive a fucking RAV for? Yeah, you see what I mean? You see the difference? It's like we love, like my band Blade Runner say, we love to show off, man. We got to show off.
We do. Well, we don't. What else do we have, Professor Gigi? What else we got? What else do we have?
Hey, man, I'm going to tell you, like, the best things in life are free. I know it sounds cliche.
but look, I have to tell you, like, living here. I remember the first time I came here, I had like cavities in the back of my mouth, and I was scared to go to the dentist. Went to the dentist, but the dentist was mad at me. Why did you wait so long? I got a root canal, a bridge, paid like $150. And he's like, what are you scared of coming to the dentist for? And I'm like, oh, whoa, my thinking is screwed up. Because I'm afraid I'm going to get a $10,000 bill for that. And that's because our thing.
That's America versus Japan.
That's right. That's exactly right.
That's America versus Japan. And look, the only thing I got an issue with, look, bro, I'm saying this, right? Money is artificial, right? It's a human fabrication. And it's utilized as a promissory note for exchange value between human beings, right? I mean, at its root, that's what it is. I think I've gone through this exercise. I talked about John Locke and what he thought like the accumulation of property is or should be until, of course, the arrival of money. Because, I mean, ultimately, John Locke says the way that you accumulate property or appropriate property is by mixing your labor in with it. And then once you do so, it becomes yours, okay? Because you own your own self. But I mean, ultimately, go ahead, Zane. Go ahead.
Can I say something before I lose service, man? I'm very familiar with BGS, and he knows I drive trucks, and my wife drives trucks. And I'm not trying to brag, but you are accurate. I just brought in $8,500 this week for 6 days. But
good net.
I'm still longing to be home, to work out, to go to a jazz festival, to go to a cigar lounge. So like you said, you can make all this money, man. But I'm 32, just got married last year. There's this feeling that I want to go home, to just have that home life, like you're saying. You know what I mean?
One of the things, like I think Aristotle said this, but I could be wrong. But you gotta have time to reflect and enjoy what you work for.
Yes.
Otherwise, what are you working for to begin with?
Yes.
Like,
I say this example. I grew up in Seattle growing up, right? And I just dropped off in Colorado last night. Just stepping outside and feeling that cold breeze, air, just felt good. You know what I mean? Like, man, I miss home, man. I miss going outside and working out and putting a jacket on. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because when you in a truck, you in a climate truck. I mean, you can turn it hot, you turn it cold. You in and out the truck, you getting gas. You know what I mean? You picking up whatever. But just stepping outside last night, I looked at my wife and I was like, man, I just can't wait to feel this again, constantly. You know what I mean? So it's not about chasing the bag like motherfuckers always try to make it be. It's like you're saying, it's that comfort zone that you want. That's gonna make you happy. And go ahead.
Think about it like this, man. Like a motherfucker like Rockefeller's son, right? Or grandson.
Yeah.
He ain't got to go out and to do the shit that you doing in order to be able to sit back and think like I got resources to enjoy myself. I'm not saying that he, necessarily, by having money has a good life. I don't think that that's the case, right? But I do think that, like, you know, working yourself to the bone in order to enjoy the good life is an excess.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think that, like, you're fortunate, though, to be in an industry at this time, because we don't know what that industry is going to look like 30 years from now, okay?
Well, last year, man, I was bringing in netting. Me and her was netting 12,000. So now with that recession hitting, we're only like netting 8,000. But it's still above average. But I'm still listening to you guys, listening to BGS, and staying on top of things. You know what I mean? I'm not getting comfortable. So I appreciate you guys giving that knowledge of don't be comfortable.
Yeah, don't be. I mean, go out and get your bread. I would never tell people to not do that. Okay.
Yeah.
But I also want you to be mindful of this, man. You still a worker, man.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, like for some reason, like black folks, when they get like, they first see that first 100 G's or something like that, they all of a sudden think that they gotta, you know, like they need to go for the Grey Poupon bottle.
Oh no, you can't get comfortable, man. You can't get comfortable, man. As soon as I start seeing that money 2 years ago, man, I got me a financial advisor. He hooked me up with a life insurance. You know what I mean? Because I had learned from the Vanderbilt family compared to the Rothschilds, and I got me a life insurance to get that compound interest of going on, and I have my stuff set up because, like you said, you don't want to be working the rest of your life.
No, sir. No, sir. Unless you enjoy doing what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? Like, unless,
of course, yeah.
It's like professors and shit like that, like Dr. Thunder, man, they can retire, man. They be 80 and still ain't fucking gone from the university, soaking up all the departmental money and funds and shit like that.
Yeah.
But hold on, let me do one thing. Shout out to Jason Hales, man. He says, Dr. GG, this is not a boring discussion. There is a severe representation of these discussions. Thank you for showing up for work today, man. I appreciate you, sir. True indeed, man. I got to give you some honors for that one, man. And shout out to Sir Anthony, man, who hit me up on the Cash App, man. I really appreciate it. The sole, lonely, and solitary Cash App for the day, man. Appreciate you, man. Appreciate that. But
and Dr. Thunder, Dr. Thunder, what key is that in? That Dr. GG just played.
What key is that? Oh, hold on a second there. Yeah.
He ain't got perfect pitch like that. No, I'm just saying.
It's almost in between keys. I think it's actually going to C. It's going to C major.
Yeah, that's he has it. He's got it.
And lastly, GG, I don't know if you want to discuss it, but I gotta give you some smoke, man. Like, me and my wife listen to you all the time. Have a dictionary out whenever you're talking, like you're a scholar, man. But my interpretation of SBE is when you was talking to May and you was pinpoint everything. You had Black Uru, you had Officer Faulkner, and she still shitted on Kevin Samuels, Dr. T. Hansen. Dr. T. And that's why I was like, see, this is how SBE is looking like, because no matter what, you cross your T's and dot your I's, they still don't give a crap. So I say fuck talking to them. But that's my opinion. You know what I mean? I still respect you. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to shame you or anything. But SBE to me is when you talking to some females that don't give a fuck about what you're saying, and they're going to disingenuously discount what you say and talk shit about the men that you're talking about, like Kevin Samuels, like the PhD doctor. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
yourself.
but I put it this way, man. Like,
still got love for you, bro. Still got love for you, man.
They say, if the other person, like, dialogue takes two.
Mm-hmm.
And the dialogue has to be of a sincere and, an honest kind. Like, if it's really taking place. Otherwise, there's nothing, it's not dialogue, it's just, it's two monologues taking place. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, everybody's entitled to their opinion. Like, if you feel like men having discussions and conversations have to, lead to, at this very moment, what you consider to be a political or social or economic progress for black people. Like that's why I came up with some disclaimers, man. I said, and I don't know if you have been privy to me talking about it, but the first thing I said is, look, I'm not a leader, politician, counselor, spiritual advisor, financial advisor, psychiatrist, psychologist, game coach, life coach, personal assistant, or any other role that may imply professional guidance or authority in various domains. I'm here to hold discussions that may or may not lead to political action or reform.
Yeah.
And I argue that you're responsible for your own development and agency, and that demands for me to undertake actions for you or any other group of persons based on my education or experience is parasitism. If you want to start talking about Ayn Rand, don't demand that I do something for you. I'm not your politician. I'm not your pastor. I'm not your daddy. Okay, I'm just somebody online. Don't put so much stake in the conversations that we're having. Like, I mean, it's one thing to say, okay, well, you know, like, let's get together and let's work on X. Okay, I can see that. But don't dictate, demand that I demonstrate that I've done something for you, and or otherwise, fuck everything I'm saying, because it doesn't co-align with your value system. To me, it's just it's disingenuous conversation to begin with, right? So at the end, I'm saying you're responsible for your own development and agency. I'm going to try to make sure that like justice conditions are obtained for you to do that. I mean, you know, as much as I possibly can, but I am one individual. And if you participate in these conversations, it should be based on personal curiosity, intellectual exploration, and independent thinking. If you don't have a constructive or respectful form of discourse to provide, feel free to bounce, man. You don't there's no demand that anyone be here. That's the thing that, like, people,
I respect you being genuine. I was just saying she wasn't genuine.
No, I'm not saying you, and I'm not talking about you specifically at all.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, I'm saying in general, like, nobody, like her or any, like, no, like, if I don't like Queen Zilla, whatever the fuck her name is, I don't even know what the fucking her name is. I forget what they call her. The Hood Zilla, whatever the chick, the Hood Princess, whatever. Like, I don't like or Cynthia G. Let me use that. Like, if I don't like what she's talking about, I don't listen to her.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go back and forth with her, man. If I don't like her viewpoints, that's not my groove. It's not my spot. Prince Seller, yeah, that's her. Prince Seller.
Hey, last question. How much do I have to send to you for you to do a review on Ike Taylor, the guy who kind of started the Gangster Disciples, but he talks about the community, and it's kind of right up your alley. He had like a new interview with that one guy that's like in a black and white background. If you just type in Ike Taylor on YouTube, it'll pop up. But he talks a lot about what you talk about in that 60s and 70s and whatnot.
Yeah, I haven't. You ain't got to. You know, I'll look at it. Just send me a video. Like, you pay me what you want, man. You know, I ain't gonna. Okay. If I find it interesting, I'll talk about it. You know what I'm saying? Okay. It is what it is.
It was his name is Ike Taylor, and he started the kind of the Gangster Disciples and GDs and BDs with Hoover. But he was saying we got to this point because we didn't have any opportunity, and the gangs at first wasn't to promote violence. It was to educate our black men, and they were also called something else before. They were called Gangster Disciples. So hopefully I can find it and put it in the back chat or in the comment section, man. But I think it's right up your alley what you've been talking about, the St. Louis and the opportunities that black men haven't had. So there was no boots to pull up when they tell us to pull our straps up from our boots. You know what I mean? I'm butchering the word, the phrase.
For sure, man. Appreciate you, dog. Appreciate you.
I'll send it to you, man. I thank you. Appreciate you having me, man.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Dr. Thunder, man, talk to me, man. You've been here for a while. You ain't saying nothing, man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I can get in right here. So the neoliberal thing is interesting. It's riddled full of problems. One of the issues is this there's this constant. We're going to grow the economy. That's how we're going to get out of this problem. The answer is to grow the economy. The problem with growing the economy is that there's a finite nature of things. You can't. You're going to run up against a hard limit at some point. And although I would argue that there is still some room for growth in certain areas, just as material is finite, so is the economy going to be finite. One such example of this is the issue with lithium batteries. We don't. There's not enough material in the universe. Actually, there's a shortage of the material that that these batteries are made out of. And if you're going to try to say, okay, let's go to all electric cars, that's not even something that's possible. So I think that's an interesting point. And I always hear folks talk about how they're going to, the economy is always the answer. That's cool, but I think part of the answer is people are going to have to start to tighten their belt and stop being so materialistic. My dad always told me, and he always tells me, he says, wants are insatiable. Because as soon as you get the thing that you want, you shift to wanting something else. And people think that they're going to be able to, by getting this next thing, they're going to be able to assuage that, that urge, and it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. And I think it's totally true that the best things in life are free. That's not to say don't try to get your money. You should try to get your money. But to think that money or the material possessions that you gain are going to somehow fill some sort of hole in your soul, just ask Kirk Franklin.
I talked about him earlier. Yeah, I said something about that earlier. Like, let me say this in response, right?
Sure.
I only discussed. So I basically was reacting to a video. Of course, the scholar's name is Robin Hannell. Okay, and ultimately, what he does is he says, look, there are certain myths about neoliberalism, and I want to tease them out. So this person has studied, and taught economics for like 40 years, okay? And, I've studied economics to some degree, but I'm not an expert in it. I'm not a specialist as it pertains to the economy, but I do understand some of the key concepts contained within it. And ultimately, he says there's a series of myths. And one is that, free enterprise equals economic freedom. And he just basically says, look, that's not necessarily the case. The allocation of resources is determined by the market, and it's influenced by individual choices, but there are conflicts. And what happens when, one person's economic freedom conflicts with another? So there can be competing claims about what can and what can't be done, or what should or shouldn't be done as it pertains to transactions. And, he talks about property rights and who gets to make the final say. Only people who have a lot of money. They're the ones that they're the arbiter of what goes because they got more cash, right? And then, what about people who inherit wealth? Well, that just throws a monkey wrench in the whole concept of, the country we live in being a meritocracy, right? And there are barriers to entry, to own businesses and, to actually become a capitalist, okay? Not to say it's impossible, but let's just be honest. Most people are going to work and, they're going to fucking die, and that's it. It's the truth, okay? Talks about efficiency issues. The only thing, look, I only got to 4 of these, but the other one that he talks about and it relates to what you've been saying, and he talks about the budget. right? And like the neoliberals is like, well, you know, we got to balance the budget. We got to do the best we can to get rid of all the deficit. And you just got to understand this, man. Look, what's inherently good, right, for a household is not necessarily good for government finances. So the government should not be managed like a household budget. That's a common narrative, but it's false. It's not prudent for the government to manage the economy like somebody is managing their household, okay? They have different objectives, right? So individuals are gonna budget to meet their personal financial goals. Like, say, for example, I'm saving for a retirement or a home or something like that. But governments have broader objectives than that. They have to make sure that the economy is stable, that the public welfare is taken care of. And they have to look to long-term development of the nation itself, right? And then also their scale. Like what's happening at a household level is nothing like what's happening with a government who has to not only pay attention to what's going on in its own, you know, borders, but they got to worry about like the trade relationships they have with other countries and shit like that. And so the government has macroeconomic implications that individual budgets don't. So that's the first thing. And then also think about this. You're going to have the ebb and flow of recessions and boom periods in any economy, okay? It's just the way the shit goes, right? So during a recession, you're not gonna be able to collect as much taxes, okay? That's just the way it is. So one could think, okay, well, you know, we're in a recession, we gotta cut government spending so we can balance the budget. But is that really actually productive as it pertains to like what a nation should do? You gotta kickstart the fucking economy. You gotta put money out there. You gotta spend, the government has to spend more during a recession to get the shit going again, right? It's like performing, you know, CPR on the economy. You can't just say, okay, we're gonna get tighter and tighter during the recession. That'll destroy the economy even worse and make it, you know, it'll depress the market even more, right? Which could lead to reduced employment, lower incomes, a whole bunch of shit. So that's why a lot of economists favor like stimulus spending, okay? They try to kickstart the economy or whatever. But like, I just hate it when like neoliberals do that shit. They, you know, they try to act as if the budget, you know, like the national budget is a household budget. It's some bullshit, okay? I just don't like how I don't like the equivocation games they play when they know better. Especially,
yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that either. I think on a simple level, there is an aspect of being responsible that the government doesn't seem to follow through on, where often their solution for families is, well, you're going to have to, you know, tighten your belt. You're going to have to do this and that. We're going to raise taxes on that. That's going to hurt. But, you know, just don't spend as much money on this other thing, where they don't seem to have the same level of discipline. Even, and I'm not talking about tightening the belt during the recession. I'm saying if we're during a boom period, then the government should be setting aside money so that when we come back around to a recession, that there's money that actually exists there for that purpose, and you don't have to, you know, quantitative easing and all of these other things that occur that are literally robbing people of their savings. It would be better for people not to have savings during those time periods. It'd be better for them to go and actually spend money on assets. That's why you see people getting gold and all this kind of stuff. But it'd almost be better to go buy some valuable assets that are not going to lose a lot of value than to leave your money in the bank when the government starts doing that quantitative easing.
Yeah, I get the point. You know, my whole thing is this, man.
Sure.
You know, I just think the country has taken a neoliberal turn, which ultimately means, I think that the current manifestation of neoliberalism is basically like the financialization of the economy, which isn't about long-term growth. It's not investment into brick and mortar companies or human resources.
Yep.
It's the investment in financial instruments. Okay, the kind which basically leads to bubbles. And it doesn't lead to economic growth over the long run. All it does is it leads to the creation of trading and manipulation strategies, and it garners certain people financial assets, which are basically speculative. We're not even, these people are playing, they're gambling with money, man.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's not even a sound investment strategy. Like the shit that sparked the 2008 housing crisis was, again, like I started off the show by having a conversation about how it all began. Like initially people would get loans from local banks. And the loan officers, you know, would be careful about the kind of loans that they gave out, precisely because they knew, that bank knew that it would be holding on to that title for 30 some odd years, 25 to 30 years.
Yep.
So they better be damn sure that they're, you know, like they're making a safe bet with the people who are applying for loans.
Yep.
Okay. But then when the market became deregulated, okay, and the you know, like the Wall Street major, you know, financial institutions decided they wanted to get involved in the game. Oh, there's money to be made here. They started to invest in subprime mortgages. Like, okay, so it's one thing for a local company who, you know, has some rapport with the people who own, you know, or buying, you know, the property. It's one thing to do that. It's another thing to have some, like Bank of America. Them motherfuckers will never know me. They will never see me. They will never have a conversation with me. They can give me a loan and make interest off the loan, but then sell it in 4 to 5 hours to another company. And that company can sell it to another company. And one company can buy from another company and then, you know, like combine them all together in a package. Like, well, you want to buy these mortgage loans? You got some money, you'll have some money coming to you, you know, in the next, you know, 40, 50 years. And so, I mean, this is the way the business was done. And it got to the point where nobody knew if they had good or bad loan signees. And so ultimately, it led to a situation where the people, like, because people at the big boys and banks loan money from each other all the time. Hey, can I get some money? Yeah, sure thing, buddy. You know, but at a certain point, the bubble breaks and it's like, well, I can't give you that loan. All it takes is one motherfucking principal player to say, I'm not going to give you a loan. I don't know if I can, you know, like if this will be a sound investment. Then guess what? Everybody clams up. There's your recession right there. Okay? Yeah. That's the bubble bursting. Because now you don't, like, nobody knows who has a good or a series of bad loans. Nobody knows. You might know, but you don't know what they have. And they don't know what you have. Because there's no openness. The standards, there's no regulatory standards. And again, I knew guys personally who were getting black people to sign subprime mortgages, dog. And they were making a shit ton of money doing it, man. I'm talking about like Ghost Ride the Whip type money. You think I'm bullshitting? These guys, man, had an office building, man, set up, man, with telephones ringing, fax machines faxing, cell phones ringing, man. They had the hotline. They had the trap bunking with these subprime mortgages, these balloon rate mortgages. And the whole point is that they were at the bottom of the food chain and was eating off that shit.
Well,
So, I mean, you know, like, but the whole point is this guy here, this Robin Hannell, he's like, look, the same kind of fucking system that existed before, it still exists. The so-called restructuring of the way that the money system works, nothing happened.
yeah.
And so, like, it's bound to happen again.
Go
ahead.
And of course, all of this stuff is happening. You know, none of this stuff is happening in a vacuum, right? So it's interacting with other events that are happening, which is making everything worse faster. So, you know, we go off the gold standard for the currency. Simultaneously, women are basically injected into the workforce. And you notice that happens is the pay for the same job plummets. And what that does is simultaneously it creates the need for both men and women to work.
Right, because labor is it's supply and demand. One could argue, like it's like there's an oversupply of work. I mean, people into the labor market. So now you reduce, you know, like the price that you got to pay for the labor. You know what I'm saying? Because so many people.
Well, it was that, but I believe it was also that they were hiding what they were actually doing with the money. So because they went off the gold standard, they were basically printing extra money and giving it to their cronies while making us pay for it.
Yeah,
right?
I get it. But you know, I just look at it like this. Once you go off the gold standard, you use fiat money. And that like this electronic money, man. It is cryptocurrency. This shit is cryptocurrency for real.
Mm.
I mean, you got to think, okay, at the end of this is why I say Dollar Will says it's not really gambling once you know how to read the charts, right? But put it this way, look. It's one thing to take risks in investment. I mean, everybody who like even a dope dealer that's buying some weed, man, is taking a risk. Okay? You open a chicken stand on the corner, you're taking a risk. Right?
Yeah.
You give somebody a loan, they might not pay you back. That's a risk, right?
Yeah.
You shoot craps at the crab table, it's a fucking risk, right? Yeah. Now, I mean, you got good odds and you got bad odds, okay? So all I'm saying is what happened to the economy is that it became financialized, okay? And what I mean by that is the increasing dominance of financial institutions and markets over the economy, which is a shift away from productive investment in real assets to speculative investments in financial assets. Okay? Now, it can be a driver of economic growth and development. It can be. But it also can, if it's not managed appropriately and the principal players don't have anyone to check them, a number of negative consequences can ensue, especially for like regular people. Because think about it. How do these companies get bailed out when they get bailed out? Who pays the bill? Not them. It's the average person who the tax dollars that come out of you working that pays for it.
Yeah.
Okay. So at the end of the day, all I'm saying is when you start to financialize the market, and it basically concentrates economic power in the hands of a small group of financial elites, man. And they use their power to manipulate markets, financial markets, and promote their own interest at the expense of the public good, man.
Yeah, what's masterful about this this strategy of these this oligarchy status, folks, is they are able to convince broke people to believe the dream, and then put policies in place that seem to work against what their actual best interest is. Now the challenge for brothers, for us, for folks that are perhaps have certain religious misgivings with what they're doing on the left, is it puts you in a very strange position, because you can point out that these financial policies, which many of which are championed by the right, are not particularly beneficial to the working class person. But then you have to swallow a lot of you got to swallow wholesale a lot of stuff that seems to be directly aimed at us.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
They put black men in between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
They alienated us in such a way that, like, this is why I say the left never really interpolated black men into their politics to begin with.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just the truth. And the extent to which black women are interpolated into the politics is the extent to which white women have been interpolated into it. We just we just give them the vote because on the strength of what they actually did do in terms of passing the Civil Rights Act. But again, going back to that Kimberly Crenshaw article, if I had to show you that one part where she said, even the Democratic Party, man, they even play the racial game. Like if it's not to their benefit to placate black folks, the people who vote for them in the largest numbers, if in terms of percentages, we can't say in terms of raw numbers, but percentages. If they find that they can do something like the Southern strategy, and to show that they're not too heavily committed to racial issues, they'll do it. So it's to not alienate white folks who feel like they're doing something overly beneficial for black folks. Like the Clintons are a perfect example of Democrats who did that.
Yeah.
Joe Biden as well. And even like the woman who is the gay woman that be kicking it with tone talks? Yvette Carnell.
Oh, yeah.
BGS just did a show with her talking about how like the Democratic Party shit on black men.
Yeah, I did a review of that video, actually.
Did you?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, of the shorter clip that he put out, because he did like a 3 hours video on the whole video. But then he did like a short, more punchy video, which I took a look at.
Right. But I mean, my viewpoint on it is the Democratic Party is not really our friend. But I don't think that, my whole viewpoint is the enemy of your enemy is not necessarily your friend.
Right. Definitely in our case. That's definitely true.
You're in hostile territory. Just because them motherfuckers warring with each other don't mean they won't knock your ass in the head either.
And in our case, too, the person that is supposed to be our friend ain't our friend either.
Boy, we still on the plantation, man. The plantation politics, man, they loom heavy in our lives, man. Yep. Just a fact. I mean, it's a fact, man. And the only reason black women have what they consider makes them magical is something that, like, it's because the civil rights movement was co-opted by sex or gender politics. That's the only reason why. That's it. And so, like, I mean, you know, I'm not here to, you know. The only issue with it is, don't throw us under the bus. Like, it'd be one thing if they just played the economic game and that was it. But then they had to take it further than that. Okay, it would, like, okay, get your money. Okay, look, the conduit exists for you to get your money. I can't, the way the cards fit, you know, the way they were dealt, like, okay, as long as you use it in order to look after the entirety of the community, that's fine. But see, it's one thing, you know, it's one thing to say, okay, I'm gonna take advantage of this and give back to the community from which I come from and not have a arrogance about me. But them motherfuckers got their asses on their shoulders. They got the saying they magical and shit. I'm magical. What you mean, you magical? What the, like, you mean you like a fairy or something? Like you got, like, I mean, like you got fucking like powers of supernatural kinds now? I mean, you gotta think of it like, what if a nigga start saying they was magical and shit? Like they fucking Pinocchio or Rumpelstiltskin or something, man. Come on, man.
Yeah.
I mean, think about this. Black man magic? Just imagine some shit like that, man. I'm not saying, look, hey, bro, I don't know, man. I'm just saying, like, think about it. Because to me, all that signifies is, nanny boo boo, look at me. Fuck you niggas. That's Eddie Murphy with the ice cream.
Yeah, it's that, and of course it is. It's like taking credit for something that you didn't do, right? So
Exactly,
I didn't actually do this thing. It's not really based on me being better than you, but I'm going to act like I'm better than you, pull the ladder up, and then point down at you, you know, calling you all kinds of nakers and and dusties and everything else.
But see, and my theory is, this is why I say it's dumping. Really? Okay, so like everybody knows that, like, increasingly, like and this is why I love Dr. Curry's work so much, man. I mean, he basically just demonstrates that, like, racism is primarily an anti-black misandrous enterprise.
100%.
And just like, I mean, and Sedania says this. There are other scholars who've also kind of, like, you know, come out and says something similar. But the point is, like, now we have to suspend, because white women wanted an entry point into the civil rights movement. Now we have to suspend our beliefs about the nature of conflict between races, ethnic groups that has existed for millennia. Like, now all of a sudden we're supposed to suspend our belief and think that, you know, the world is centered around gender oppression, when the same white women who owned slaves and were like the main protagonists or promoters of segregation, now they're talking about they're oppressed. Like, bro, it's a lot for, as a black man, it's a lot for me to take in, man. It's a lot for me to, it's too much for me to accept. I can't.
Yeah,
I find it very difficult to accept, bro.
Yeah, you know, it's really a basic concept. We've put some, you know, this idea of that the men would be the ones that would be the more oppressed, because what happens in when you conquer another society, right? What happens, like when the Vikings came in, who were they trying to eliminate first? They eliminate all the adult males, and they took the women as concubines, the ones they didn't kill, and perhaps they would raise some of the children as their own, but they would kill a bunch of the kids too.
Of course.
So this idea that racism, if it is the weapon of choice by which to conquer a society, a sub society, then of course men would be the primary target, and it's only through indoctrination, uh, propaganda, that we would ever believe anything contrary to that. Because this is what history shows us. I mean, you open up any history book, any story about war, and in matter of fact, who's even the people that do the fighting on the front lines in wars? It ain't the women. So it's
But white women get what white women want, man. I mean, look.
Of course.
So it's like, I mean, it hasn't always been that way, but I think, so you see what happened was, and this is why I want to write this paper on dumping. I mean, ultimately, my idea is that everything the white men made white women into a victim, which wasn't a real victim, but they created a fictional victim in order to justify the extension of brutality to black men. Because of course, like if we leave poor Miss Ann out there, this Remus is gonna come around and try to fuck her.
Right.
He's gonna try to take the little pink pussy. Sorry, this is my show, so he's gonna try to take her drawers. But in reality, what was happening is you were fucking raping as many black women as you wanted to.
Yeah.
But now you want to make the white woman into a victim to demonstrate that, you can't touch what gives birth to whiteness. She will not be tainted. Okay? Now, that's a tremendous amount of power, and it's confining and restrictive as well to women. I'll admit that, okay? Because now they got to be pure and pristine and all this shit, but they really weren't anyway. But it's the imagery, right? But here's the issue. Them motherfucking women participated in racial hierarchy, domination, exploitation, genocide, the whole nine. Now, all of a sudden, now they're victims. The world needs to arc and bend down and genuflect for them. But every black women's value system is predicated upon white women's value system. I'm sorry, it just is. Whatever they value, not a value. Mm. And this is the issue I got, because they know better. Like Kimberly Crenshaw definitely knows better. But she didn't give a fuck because, she bought into the dominant feminist narrative, which is that, like black men are just beating the shit out of black women. Like there's danger around every corner lurking, and women, it's hysteria, if you ask me.
Yeah, I watched, I can't remember which one. I don't know if you've done more than one with her, but it was recent. And I agree with what she was saying, at least at that time. But she obviously went through some major shift, because much of what she says now, I don't agree with. And what was this thing about creating this opportunity for white women to be considered minorities, so that they could also take advantage of the civil rights movement. Not only was it an opportunity to further marginalize black men and be able to go after black men to dominate us, it also, and we're talking about finances today, right? You're talking about finances. It was a way to funnel massive resources back to themselves. Right? Because the huge percentage of recipients of these jobs going to white women, that goes back to the household of the white man, right?
Man, that's a hell of a thing, man. Look, I know a whole bunch of white women that's feminists, man. They got husbands and shit, man. Real talk. I mean, like, these ain't people like I'm imagining. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm talking about, like, I got female friends who are college professors, who are white and feminist. And guess what? They got fucking husbands. They have fucking husbands. Now, do they have problems with it? Do they bitch and complain about their husbands every now and then? Yeah. But they definitely ain't throwing them under the bus like, fuck him, he's a naker.
Right.
You know, like, he's an irredeemable, fucking lousy ass man who needs to be obliterated. Kill me now. Ask me how. They not. Hold on, and then let me shout out Nubis, man. Shout out my nigga Nubis. 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 But anyway, yeah, I just have some, you know, I have some reservations, man, about like their motives and what they did. I just like you up on Curry, right? Like, have you watched that video? You mistake the backlash for a movement?
No, I haven't.
You ain't seen that video? You mistake a backlash for a movement?
I have not seen that video.
Yeah, man, you need to check that motherfucker out, man. Curry's a bad man.
Well, I mean, of course, I've checked out a bunch of his stuff. I haven't seen that particular video.
I'm gonna give it to you now.
All right, thank you.
They mistook a backlash for a movement. Black men and the doom of Western civilization. The Hannah Arendt Center for Politics and Humanities at Bard College. So I'm gonna send you the link to it now. And I'm just gonna share it for everybody. Copy.
Yeah.
And
yep, I just got it.
yeah, so I mean, ultimately what he's saying is these chicks, man, like these suffragettes, man, they didn't give a fuck. Like, when it comes to them or black men actually being involved in emancipatory struggle, they're gonna pick themselves first every time. And one of the things they did was they were like, how dare you give these black men social capital more so than us? Your mothers, your daughters, your sisters. You're violating the racial code. So when it comes to black men being able to gain any ascendancy, guess what they do? They play the race card. White women. But we're supposed to just be like, oh, you're pure as the driven snow. Oh, you're really arcing towards justice. They really arcing towards benefits for themselves. But you got to think. And this is why, like, have you ever seen like channels like Nerdrotic?
Yeah.
Now, here's my issue with these guys, right? What they don't admit and what they don't reveal is that woke politics is something that they instituted themselves. They came up with the shit. White dude, Southern Democrat from Virginia, Howard Smith. Howard Smith. Women's civil rights. Howard Smith. Title 7 becomes the real story behind Howard Smith. Like, if I've shown this before, but I'll present it again. Share the screen. Now, you know, different people have different ideas about how it actually came to pass, what it actually means, so on and so forth. But this is a Southern Democrat. At the time that this man basically introduced sex into the Civil Rights Act, the Democratic Party was the conservative party. They were the party who was the racist party, especially in the South. They were the party of the prior supporters of the Confederacy and of segregation, the Democrats. Not the Republicans, because the Republican Party was the party of Lincoln, so to speak, right? So this motherfucking guy, man, basically said that, hey, we don't want white women to be left out. So it was introduced, women's rights was introduced by segregationists. Now she's gonna say, well, it's because we laid out decades and decades of groundwork. Okay, it could be the case that y'all laid out decades of groundwork, but the reality is, what was his motivations?
Right. Right. He's only going to go for it if it aligns with his agenda. No.
That's it. And he's the one. He's a Southern Democrat, which means he's a redneck Democratic racist. Bottom line. Okay, it just is what it is. So a representative, a racist, redneck, Southern Democratic racist introduced sex in the civil rights law. And again, as this woman here states so eloquently, I show this all the time, but here you go.
Most important changes that have taken place in respect to the status of women since you've been in Congress.
Well, I think perhaps most important was the one that added sex to the bill of 1964. This bill was drafted really to help Negroes. Now, it wasn't clear. It would have meant that Negro women would have been given rights that were not available to white women. Therefore, we added sex. It is my belief that the drafters had assumed that no women would get any rights. So that I think both white and black women were helped by the bill.
So,
one thing we can say is that white women were helped by the bill, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that other thing.
Some black women were helped by the bill. Like, this is why they're saying they're magical. This is why they're overrepresented in education.
Well, yeah.
I mean, let's face it.
My point is really not to say that none were helped. My point is to say that they didn't care if black women were helped. They threw that in there for a particular purpose. It was not to help us. That's my point.
I get you. But I just want to make it known that there is a narrative out here that an ironic twist, right? The legislation banned gender discrimination only because of the efforts of Howard Smith, who a Democrat from Virginia and a leader of the conservative coalition in Congress, an opponent of civil rights. He was tireless in his attempts to defeat the bill, including adding sex as grounds for illegal discrimination, which he believed would guarantee the bill's failure.
Yeah.
And it resulted in a more expansive bill passing. Now, at the end of the day, like, white women can talk all day about what it did for them. But in essence, they hijacked the civil rights movement.
Yep.
So it worked. Howard Smith is not a stupid motherfucker, man. To him, he wins either way. If women get introduced into the bill, white women are going to get favoritism over black women for sure. And definitely over black men. Because they're white.
Right. But wait a minute, I thought sex was the biggest issue.
Come on, man. Like, look, at the end of the day, I'm just saying, man, you know, I showed that only for one reason. It's to show that if you're a conservative white dude, don't fucking tell me shit about woke politics. You created it. You single-handedly, your politicians, particularly a Southern Democrat, the leader of the conservative coalition in the House of Representatives in the 60s. The conservative coalition, he did the shit. He did it. Not some fucking commie lefty. Not some motherfucking diversity and inclusion motherfucker that loves trans people and who thinks that Adam and Steve should get married. That's not how that happened. It happened because you didn't want your fucking people. You would change the entire structure of your civilization along gender lines in order to stymie and thwart the progress of Negroes, man. That's the truth, man. So anytime I see them talking about how like they're getting so tired of their characters being race swapped and gender swapped, I'm like, I get the point. I understand it. But you created the conduit for that to be allowable in this culture. You did it. And you enshrined it into law in order to stymie and thwart the progress of black folks. But particularly, you did it to thwart and stymie the progress of black men because we all know how the race game is played. It's not played out between white women and white men. Oh, let's see how, let's have a pissing contest, and that's not how that happens. But now because white women have come up with a certain narrative, everybody wants to stand on that narrative now. And I'm saying intellectual people, I mean, if the goal is to get as much money and resources for your own demographic as possible and to play identity politics, it makes a lot of sense. But that's a short-term gain with a short-sighted view about politics. And about, especially about racial or group politics. It's just stupid. Because you're creating enmity and strife among an internal conflict amongst your own group. It's not smart. And then it wouldn't be a problem if black women or women in general had like the mindset that they would manage households and be the leader of households. They don't know how to do it. They can't do it. They refuse to do it.
Well, they're sort of hardwired against that, right? And it's not just the sort of social programming. It's not just the nurturing. It's actually the nature that's working against them.
They can't stand to see a nigga sitting back chilling.
Yep.
And their ass is going out to work. They can't stand it. Can't stomach it. Even, look, I swear to God, bro, like, no disrespect, man. Like, real talk, doc. I can work circles around a woman in the house, man. No disrespect to women out there, but like I can cook better than most women, and I can clean more quickly and efficiently than most women can. And I'll be done. My day will be over before the day begins. These chicks act like the shit that has to be done in the household with modern appliances, man, is so fucking simple. You don't have to even watch rice. You just pour them off. You rinse the rice off. You put it in a fucking rice cooker and you turn the motherfucker on. And when it's done cooking, you turn it off or put it on warm. You can take food and put it in a crock pot, man, and let it cook for 10 hours.
Yeah, there is such a thing as a microwave too. Yeah.
Bro, washing clothes, man. I can wash clothes and fold the motherfuckers like they in a goddamn Gap or something, man. The shit'll be looking like it's so fucking neat. Vacuum the floor. I'll be done with that shit in an hour and 30 minutes because like this is my view on house cleaning. Once you clean the house, all you gotta do is straighten the motherfucker up the next day. And I mean, of course, over time, dust and shit like that will accumulate. So like every week, you make sure that you give every room a scrub down. And you alternate like the weeks that you do it. So like 1 week you scrub the bedroom down real good. Or, you know, this shit is simple, man. I don't know what all this housework is so hard. It's some bullshit. I'm serious, man.
No, I know you're serious. You're not supposed to be saying this though, man.
Man, dude, I swear to God,
you telling secrets,
housework, bruh. I'm talking about. I'm the type of nigga when I clean the house, if it's a glass dining table, glass coffee table, television, appliances, that shit you can run your finger over that motherfucker, ain't no dust on it. Cause I like my shit to look good. I like my shit to look neat. My drawers, I don't just take my clothes out of the dryer and just throw the motherfuckers in the drawers. I fold my shit, bro.
Yeah, and somebody in the chat is talking about the grocery store.
Man,
he
look.
says that he's faster in the grocery store too.
Today, you don't even have motherfuckers would deliver your groceries for $6, man. You don't even have to leave the house to go to the grocery store no more. Like you used to have to. Okay? Today, I got HEB, man. HEB deliver my grocery for $6.95. I don't even have to leave the crib if I don't want to. This is the simplest shit, though. Well, it's so much where I gotta come home and here's the funny thing, right? This is the shit that fucks me up about it. If you living with a man or not, you still got to do the same work. Am I wrong?
Nope. Passport OG just said you can have a robot clean your floors too.
Yeah, you can buy one of them motherfucking robots, man. Like they look, it'll mop, it'll vacuum or mop a hardwood surface, man. But look. All I'm saying is, bro, at the end of the day, if you do it with or without a man, you still got to do the shit. You definitely, if you got a man, it's likely that the man gonna take up, especially if he's black, because black men have been trained to also perform housework. We've been indoctrinated to do housework. Okay?
Yeah.
But like, I mean, you damn sure if you by yourself, you got to do 100% of the shit by yourself. That's a fact. Now, maybe you think it might be less of it to do, but like a floor is a floor. A bed is a bed. Unless it's a motherfucking twin bed, but you still got to take effort every morning to fold the fucking blankets when you get out of it. Unless, of course, you one of them lazy ass motherfuckers that don't make up their bed. I got... It's military type shit for me, you know what I'm saying? Like I got to see my bed made up when I come in the bedroom. That's just me. You know what I'm saying? That's my. I know you're gonna get back in it and mess it up, but I still want to see it neat when I come in. I've had women be pissed off at me because the house too clean. Like, bitch, you just want something to complain about. You wash more than a woman do. Well, bitch, you talk more than a nigga talk. You wash more than a woman. Well, bitch, you talk more than a nigga. So now what? You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, like, at the end of the day, I still wear the pants, motherfucker. I don't sit down and piss. You do.
Oh, goodness.
I mean, no disrespect. These are realities. Like, if a woman called me, I remember, I got a flat tire. Can you come? Okay. But you strong as a motherfucker, though. You don't want to be told what to do, but you calling me to do manly shit. You don't want to fuck up your nails, huh? I'm supposed to get here and break the lugs on your motherfucking wheels, right? But I do iron work, and I know women that do iron work as well. I know you could, if you wanted to break them fucking lugs on this toy and jack that motherfucker up, you could do it. Might take you about 5-6 hours to do it because you don't know what the fuck you doing. But once you learn how to do it, I bet you can be good and proficient at it, even a lady.
You know, have you seen that video where it must be like a TikTok. I don't know. I might have seen it on short. I might have seen it on Short Bus Saturday. It might have been on your show. So it's this black female is trying to break the lugs on her wheel, trying to get the tire off.
No, I didn't do that one. I ain't do that one.
You didn't do that? Man, this is some of the funny. It's like, come on, man. It's not that difficult. Like, you can't figure it out. I mean, matter of fact, I think she was doing it the back. She was doing it the wrong way. You know, lefty loosey, righty tighty, right?
Tighty, lefty,
Man, she was trying to go to the right, bro.
Boy, man. Hey, you know, look, all I can say is, man, you know, hey, God gave you a brain, boy. If they, you know, motherfuckers used to tell me, I remember I used to play football, my coach say, boy, if you had a brain, you'd be dangerous. Say, hey, man, if you had a brain, you'd be dangerous, man. and look, I know women have the ability to do this shit because I've seen women bolt up the structural ironwork on a building. I've seen it. I've seen women handle rebar and shit and, you know, help, you know, like empty trucks of thousands of pounds of steel. But see, women don't have to do, there are many women who like to play the victim role when work is to be done. And they'll sit there and watch you do it. But when it's time for them to do some female shit, they act like you supposed to do that shit as well. Because it's fair now. Bitch, it's fair for you to get out there and mow that lawn then.
Yeah.
It's fair for you to take out that trash. It's fair for you to go ahead and take that wrench and shit and get that nut loose. I mean, you know, I'm the type of guy, look, if I love you, I'll get out there and do it for you, especially if it's like one of my family members, you know what I'm saying? But like the average motherfucker, like if you, man, fuck, you better call the mechanic or some shit, call AAA.
You better call Tyrone.
Yeah, fuck all that, man. Get out here and do all this work for you. I remember once, man, one holiday, I was fucking with this chick, right? And it's all women in the house, man. They got me putting some fucking entertainment stand together and shit. Now, it took me, you know, like about maybe like 30, 40, maybe a little more than 30, 40 minutes. But like, you know, you got to read the shit and then you got dials and all this kind of shit. You got to put the base together. Then you got to put the dials here and add one panel there and tighten it up here and keep it loose and then add this part. Now, I'm sitting there doing this shit. These bitches sitting there just standing, they just chilling, eating and shit. You think they helping me try to plan out how to put it together? Fuck no. They just watching my ass put it together. like I'm duty bound to do that type of shit for them. You know what I'm saying? Like, motherfucker, you could be grabbing a wrench or something, motherfucker, or grabbing a, you know what I'm saying, the fucking, you know, grabbing something, shit. Give me the next panel in this motherfucker. Y'all chilling while I'm working and shit on a holiday.
Yeah.
Then the woman who asked me to put together auntie, she gave me a bottle of liquor, which I think was, I guess, fair remuneration, I guess, whatever. She gave me a bottle of fucking Crown Royal, you know what I'm saying, with the green sack over the shit. And so this chick like, are you gonna drink all that? Motherfucker, don't worry about what the fuck I'm about to drink. Now you gonna tell me what the fuck I need? Now you managing my alcoholic intake.
What it's like, is this a gift for me or not? Is this for me?
Man, I swear to God, man, like it's the mommying, man. that these chicks get, you know, that they feel entitled to tell you what to fucking do. And I think precisely it's because there's been a lack of men in their households. And even the men that have been there have been kind of passive. No, she ain't say share. It wasn't about sharing. She don't want me to drink the shit. She don't like, some chicks don't like seeing you enjoy yourself, man. I swear to God, man. They got to dictate, like they say, they swear to God you're a controller. But a lot of these chicks are fucking control freaks, man. I'm just being real. I ain't saying all of them, but there's some women that I've been with who like leave me the fuck alone and let me do me. But there's some women that you need to be doing this. You need to be, look, hey. When you get to my level of achievement, then I'll listen to what you have to say. Otherwise, don't fuck with me, please. Because I'm doing all this while I'm drinking my motherfucking Hennessy or whatever, or my Budweiser. Now, what's your excuse? I don't like motherfuckers I don't like temperance women and shit like this. Like women that try to dictate how you consuming alcohol or eat, how much you're eating, what you're eating, and all this. Don't do, man, stop that, man. Cut it out, man. Stop it. But anyway, man, look, I did this show tonight because I wanted to at least gain some entry point into having a conversation about neoliberalism and some things that I think that, you know, are counterintuitive about it. Ultimately, I just got my reservations about why people believe in this disconnected, like theoretical idea about how exchange should be ordered, like that doesn't conjoin with their own like economic reality. I'm confused by it, so that's why I wanted to cover it. And BGS gave me the video, so I figured, what the hell? And it's just look, it's one thing to critique the left on like their policies related to recognition, but it's another thing to just like be totally like aloof about like what's going on with finances and the market and the economy. Like, I can be anti woke politics, but at the same time have common sense as it pertains to economics. Like, I don't have to, like, because I don't like what the left is doing doesn't mean I should all of a sudden become like a diehard fucking Republican. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean,
Right.
And not to say that there's anything wrong with being a Republican. If you can do whatever you want to. Okay. All I'm saying is, bro, like, if you're not like uber rich, why are you advocating for an economic ideal that doesn't do you any justice at all as it pertains to distribution and exchange? Why? That's it. That's all I got to say, bro. You know, I'm gonna leave that alone. I just wanted to sum that up before I do anything else. But, you know, shout out to all y'all this afternoon, man. You know, I'm hungry as hell. I'm about to eat a little something. I ate some blackened chicken fettuccine earlier. That shit was good. We need to talk music sometime, man. You know what I just did, man? I downloaded, man, like, I don't know how many fucking breaks, dude. I mean, like, I'm talking about like maybe about 100 to like 150 breaks. All of them. I mean, like, all the breaks, like Aerosmith, Walk This Way, like to Impeach the President, to the Funky Drummer. I mean, I just like downloaded 150 of them joints. And so, cause I haven't DJ'd in a long time, I think I'm gonna buy me a DJ controller and start DJing on my channel, man, like before I do shows and shit like that for like 15 to 20 minutes with like power DJ sets though. You know what I'm saying? Like killing them. Cause I used to kill them back in the day. I ain't gonna lie.
Yeah, man, that's cool. Hey, I wanted to say, uh, I had I had a big moment earlier this week, and
Oh, you
although
made tenure. Y'all heard, I heard you got not tenure, but you made full professor, man.
I did,
Congrats, man. Hey, man, that deserves, man, like a. Hey, man, congratulations, man. That's, hey, man, that's a big accomplishment, man, for real, man.
yeah, I appreciate it, man. It was, yeah, and
Congratulations on that, man.
thank you, and I have to thank, in particular, the guy that hired me, honestly, uh, black guy, Ted McDaniel, Dr. Ted McDaniel,
Okay.
who went to a HBCU, went to Morehouse,
Okay.
um, and he hired me. There were 70 applicants for my position, 7 finalists, and many of which had doctorates. I did not have a doctorate when I took the job because the
Wow.
terminal degree required for the job was a master's degree because it was I'm a professor of jazz studies, professor of jazz saxophone. It wasn't until recently um, that another degree was added and considered the terminal degree for a performer. Um, the doctorate, the DMA, which I have a DMA also, but I didn't get that until after I had taken the job and after I got tenure. And he was encouraging the whole time, um, and he thought that not only um, getting tenure with associate professor with tenure, he believed that I had what it took to be a full professor, and so he was encouraging, and I still he was one of the first people I told.
That's dope,
And,
man. You know what I'm saying?
I,
Hey, man, that's dope, man.
and I'll tell you, this is one of the things that, because there's not as many black men in the academy as black females. It can be challenging to find a black male mentor that's going to kind of understand what you're dealing with.
Yes,
Um,
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
and so the fact that I had one, I'm really grateful for that.
Yes, sir, man. You know what I'm saying? Hey, man, congrats, man. You locked into that university now. You ain't going nowhere. Feel me?
Well, I don't know, man. I don't know. We'll
It's
see.
hard to
We'll see.
move when it's hard to move when you full, but I mean, if you like if you are a rarity, then you can move where you want to move for real though. You know what I'm saying? Especially if people calling on you and like they head hunting you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I've had some. Actually, over the last couple of years, there've been quite a few folks that have reached out to me, and headhunting organizations actually that have reached out to me to apply for
Right.
certain jobs. Um, and I've never really been one that wanted to do a lot of applying for jobs for the sake of leverage. But you know, it's kind of part of the ball game.
Yeah, yeah. Like if you want to get more money, you can be like, look, they're offering me this. Like, what are you guys gonna do? And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I
It's
know.
funny because technically, there's some sort of ethical code or something that academia has that suggests that you're not supposed to simply apply just for the sake of leverage. But everybody
Shit.
ignores
Yeah, yeah. Everybody
it.
ignores that shit.
Everybody ignores that, and you're not going to know if that's what somebody's doing or not. See, so as long as you're actually interested in the position, then you can apply for it. But if you're just doing it to create leverage, which is of course what most folks are doing, then it's somehow unethical. But anyhow, It's
Yeah,
funny.
bro. You know how it go, man. You know how the game is. It
I
is
do.
what it is. They play it like that, so you play it like that. Fuck it. You know what
100%.
I'm saying?
100%.
And then you're a black male, and shit, bro. Like black men with them type of degrees, man. And then you're already tenured. Shit, you know what I'm saying? Like if you come in, you coming in tenured. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
hey, like you got some leverage. You feel me? So play it how you want to play it. Play it like that sax you got.
Ha!
You know what I'm saying? I wish I had some. I got a drum roll. I ain't got the doom doom. I need to get one of them. You know what I mean? But yeah, bro, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Like I said, man, we need to talk music at some point, though.
Yeah, I had a lot of good. I had a lot of. I was quite enjoyable that conversation we had. We were talking about hip hop and melodicism and Black American music and stuff, and that was quite enjoyable. Maybe we can reconvene on that topic sometime.
Yeah, for sure, man. For sure. I'll be looking forward to that, man. Like, I mean, we can pick a different theme, every time we talk about music, you know what I'm saying? But I feel like, that'll be entertaining for me, and maybe, I can learn some things and you can learn some things, like, I mean, we got different interests, but we both do music.
Yeah.
Maybe you do it from more of a theoretical perspective than I. I'm just like, I'm a beat maker, man. That's what the fuck I do in DJ. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
so
All right, man. Well, thanks for letting me come up and contribute, and you have a good evening.
All right, man. You too, man.
Peace.
Peace. So shout out to all y'all out there, man. I appreciate y'all staying with me this long. I'll be back tomorrow, man, to do the short bus Saturday. But I ain't doing it at the regular time. I'll be doing it at 11 o'clock, man. And then, I'm watching prime time, baby. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to see what them Buffs about to do, man, with them Ducks. You feel me? Oh, man, we going to see if Prime can put off a miracle. Because if they beat the Ducks, man, it's going to be some shit going down, boy. They going to be tearing shit down in Colorado, man. You know what I'm saying? They're going to be tearing some shit down sooner or later, man. But anyway, y'all have a peaceful, man, and a nice evening. I'm about to get me something to eat, man. I'm starving like Marvin. And I'll holler at y'all later, man. Y'all be good.